Hello again, friends, and you are my friends, and welcome back to another edition of 605, the Superpodcast, this being our annual Labor Day Star Wars extravaganza, and to kick things off, joining me here on the show, did I say my name? I'm not sure. I'm the great Brian Last. Joining me here on the show to start things out, and of course the way it works is we add various co-hosts and guests from the show, and we have a freewheeling, often unwieldy, conversation right here on the program and minimal editing, and we'll see how that works out because joining me here on the show, we have two very special guests on the line. First, he's a very popular co-host, as well as the noted wrestling humorist, Scott Cornish. Scott, welcome back to Star Wars.
Oh, glad to be here. This is the Labor Day tradition now that the Jerry Lewis Labor Day Telethon has hit the skids.
Well, I guess that's how you can refer to his death. He hit the skids, but
he got dumped a couple of years before he even died, and I'm old enough to remember that when that thing was like the pinnacle of show business, every Labor Day, he really would get the cream of the crop. And then, as I watched it, as I got older and he got older, and we all got older, the show became just the dregs of showbiz humanity.
Yeah, in New York, you were lucky if you got Mario Perillo as a guest. But hey, I want to talk more about this, but let's open up the conversation a little more.
Yes.
Also on the show, a man with a great track record here on Star Wars. Every time he appears, a natural disaster is transpiring somewhere in the continental United States. Last time it was an earthquake, he was going through, telling his wife to calm down. And this time, apparently, Howard Baum and several of our people in Florida are about to get ready for hurricane force winds or something of the like. And that, of course, is your friend and mine, the late Dan Farron. Dan, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much. Wait till you see what I have planned for Thanksgiving Star Wars. It's going to be locust.
Yeah, turkeys coming down from the sky. Dan, any thoughts on the Jerry Lewis Telethon? You know, various territories would have their wrestlers appear on the local broadcast. Dick the Bruiser would appear on the Indianapolis version of the Jerry Lewis Telethon. By the time I was growing up, I knew that it was this Hollywood thing. It was this, I shouldn't even say Hollywood. I knew it was this tradition and you would get kind of the glitzy Hollywood crowd, but it was the glitzy Hollywood crowd from a little bit of an older generation than me. So I would try to watch it, but it was always tough to find anything really entertaining on there. What do you think about the Jerry Lewis Telethon?
I hated it because it meant that the summer was over and I had to go back to school. That's what it basically, and oftentimes it meant the very next day, you know. But it was a tradition for the longest time. I don't remember any wrestlers, at least on this end, out here appearing because by that time Los Angeles was dead and buried. There was nothing going on out here. But no, it was true. In the beginning, this was this big thing. It was like 12, 24 hours, whatever the heck it was, you know. And there was always these big stars they would save and they would do this stuff. And then by the last couple of years before Jerry got bounced on it, whatever, it was like, you know, we're in Laughlin and we have Bob Johnson, the knife thrower. I mean, it was that kind of, it was down to people no one ever heard of. I heard my wife one time and said, oh my God, I'm only like about 4 inches away from being famous enough to be on this telethon now at this point. And that's how bad it was.
It became the telethon from UHF, where it was just like any freak show could get on the air. Right. It was rough, and it was 24 hours. Jerry Lewis would stay awake for 24 hours. This man was not on speed. But, Scott, any thoughts?
Well, he cheated in later years, poor Jerry, as he got on in years. He'd be out for the first hour or two, and then he would sort of disappear for the longest period of time, and they'd just use pre-taped pieces and things like that, and then they'd bring him back sparingly in different things. But just, I mean, everybody's heard about his behavior behind the scenes. There's got to be an entire book of just telethon stories alone about Jerry Lewis backstage on those things. I hope somebody gets a chance to write it. But I do remember a clip that's been up on YouTube and then taken down off of YouTube during the peak of the WWF boom years, where Bobby Heenan and Randy Savage are on the telethon with Jerry Lewis. And Randy Savage doesn't have anything particularly great to say, But it's funny, as you can almost imagine, Bobby Heenan is on fire, and it's just he doesn't say anything terribly insulting, except he keeps confusing Jerry Lewis with Jerry Lee Lewis, and on purpose. And Jerry cannot keep up with Heenan. He just is sort of sitting there, in what kind of a daze you can only imagine. But as far as I know, it's not currently up on YouTube, but I hope it turns up again. Very funny clip.
Boy, you want to talk about cheap heat, though. Jerry Lewis is the king of cheap heat. I mean, things are getting bad. We're not making enough money. Let's wheel the kids out and make them parade around in a circle again. I mean, just basically doing everything he possibly can to guilt people into sending money.
Yeah, it was something. Like I said, there was a time when it was just the state-of-the-art show business. It was such an amazing, Johnny and Sinatra and all these people. Wayne Newton at the time was quite a hit. And then I don't know, because he kept making more money year after year after year. The Telethon would somehow surpass the previous year almost every year. And yet it just got worse and worse in terms of, when you're left with a note, no offense to the guy itself, but when your top guy is like a Norm Crosby in the early 2000s. I don't know what you say to that, but it went from must-see TV to just watching for all the wrong reasons by the end of it. And I miss it. I actually do. Not that I would sit and listen to it. As a kid, you wanted to watch as much as possible, or I did, because I was a weird kid.
I would watch and just wait, like something good has to happen at some point. This is on every year. People watch it. And it seemed like I never tuned in whenever the good shit happened.
Right.
Like never. It was, and then it would go to the local feed, and then it would get really, really bad.
Yeah.
The Ramones were on once from the New York feed, but they didn't interact with Jerry Lewis, sadly.
And Jerry was really bad at sometimes when he got really tired and doped up or whatever. He would start insulting like some of the corporate sponsors. I mean, I remember they had a guy in a Mickey Mouse costume on there presenting a check, and Jerry keeps yelling, "Get the rat out of the way! Get the rat out of the way!" During that entire. I mean, it was cringeworthy. It's like, let's take a guy and watch him disintegrate on TV for 24 hours.
Precious memories.
Yeah. All the good old days.
I wish there were more stories, though, like, Bruno Sammartino appearing, or even better, Lou Albano appearing, like when he was a heel still and drinking still. Like, that would have been the local television I like. That's the kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm sure there's examples of that, but of course it all went out there into the ether.
It's weird, have you listened to last week's Arezzi show yet, Scott?
Yes, I have.
Where Mitch Seinfeld's talking about when he was on, and I've never seen this episode, the Morton Downey Jr. episode where it's the second wrestling episode. He's on there saying how wrestling needs to be regulated and actually, I forget if that was his argument per se, but it was about the whole deregulation thing that was in the news at that period of time, early 89, because Vince McMahon tried to get the New Jersey State Athletic Commission to deregulate wrestling, and they did. And he got attacked by Lou Albano and Davey O'Hannon and a few other people. And I'm like, man, Lou Albano was all over TV at that period of time in the late 80s. And he took every side of it, because here on this show, apparently, he was defending Vince McMahon. And then on other shows, he would say bad things about Vince McMahon. And then a few months later, he's Super Mario. All over the place, Lou Albano. Scott, I know you're a big Albano fan. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. No, I hope that episode still turns up. But it sounds like they went with the same cast of characters that they had from the first Morton Downey Jr. Show, because I think they said Tony Altomore shows up on that. And is Dennis on the second show, or I
believe he was there, but I don't know if he appeared on. Again, I've never seen the footage of it.
Right. Oh, well, it'll turn up someday, I'm sure. I found a WWF promotional photo of Morton Downey Jr. recently. I'll have to send that over to you. Very, very strange to remember that same kind of thing, not just the wrestling episodes, but just his brief window into fame.
So wait, you got a promo photo from his appearance at WrestleMania 5?
No, I saw it somewhere, someplace that did a whole gallery of old WWF promo photos. Just about everybody, right down to the announcers, just about everybody that ever worked there had promotional photos taken. And there's one really appalling one of, well, it's a terrific photo of him because it really captures him, but just a brash, obnoxious, big mouth photo of Morton Downey Jr. But put out by them. It's got their logo on it and everything, in conjunction with his WrestleMania appearance too. Which, unfortunately, by the time he made it to WrestleMania, the whole Morton Downey thing was so over. Piper made it into something fun, but what a long segment. And like I said, I think the Morton Downey Jr. Fad had really faded by that point.
Yeah, and it was a waste of Piper. It was Piper's first appearance in years. And it was Piper, Brother Love, and Morton Downey Jr. in the middle of Trump Plaza, a building with just no atmosphere whatsoever.
Yeah.
It was not. And that was the same night Run DMC bombed in front of that crowd with their WrestleMania rap.
Yeah, that whole segment with Brother, can you imagine Brother Love, Morton Downey, and Piper? They should have added Trump to that. That would have.
He was in the front row. If you watch those shows, he's in the front row. He reacts to nothing.
Oh, never. That must have been pure agony for him. They have to sit through those things.
I don't know. Dan, did we scare you off?
No. I'm just saying, what I'm doing is I'm laying low because I don't know which of the hours you're going to cut out, and I'm trying to hold back the material for the right one. So that way later on, because I know what your trick is now, Last. What you're doing is that you're coming out and saying, "Oh, the first hour was horrible. I don't think I'll put it up," and then everybody goes nuts and says, "No, I want to hear the first hour." Then you string together a 3-hour show, and you got big ratings. That's how this thing works. I know.
It may have worked that way once, but I don't know if it'll work that way. Dan, you're on the West Coast. Morton Downey Jr. Who do you pick, Morton Downey Jr. or Wally George?
Oh boy! Well, see, there was a difference there. At least I think that Morton Downey Jr. at least had a game plan. I think he at least knew where he was headed or what he was trying to do. And in fact, early on, Morton Downey appeared a couple times on Wally George before he became quote unquote famous. And Wally was really pretty well clueless. I mean, he really never really had any idea of what was going on at any time. And I think the people that ran his show were the people who would set him up with stuff, and he would just go for it. And he even at one point was so popular that they had a live call-in show at 1:00 in the afternoon on KDOC out here, where Wally would come on and talk about what was going on that day, and people would phone in. And of course, whenever you put a phone in people's hands and let them call Wally George, they spent most of the time bleeping people and cutting them off or whatever. And Wally would never be quick enough on the uptake to tell what was a gay phone call or whatever. And that's the stuff that I wish there was more of it existed, because some of that stuff was hysterical. He had no idea that people were putting him on at first or doing stuff like that. That's what made it really, really interesting, because poor old Wally just didn't have any idea what was going on. He was just along for the ride. He had started out as a sidekick on a former mayor of Los Angeles, Sam Yorty's show out here. And he was just like this toady type character, and he took it and he built it from there. And he was always very, very bitter. He used to always insult Morton Downey on the air of how mad he was that he stole my act, and he used to refer to it as an act.
And the other interesting thing is when Morton Downey left San Francisco, he was replaced on the radio by Rush Limbaugh, who needed a new act, and he took the Morton Downey Jr. act because he was just a DJ at that period of time.
Well, you can go back way far back in TV history. I mean, there were guys like Joe Pine in the 1960s and other guys like that who just figured out, like with wrestling, you get on the air and you start screaming about things and calling people names or whatever, and people flock to that stuff to listen to it.
Well, it's interesting to hear that Wally George like a lot of those shows probably started out as a shoot, to use wrestling terminology, because every clip I ever saw that it looked like a total BS. It just looked like a total gag, where everybody was just sort of play acting and shouting at each other.
Yeah, they had a lot of shows like that out here from time to time. At one point they decided in the early 70s, it would be a great idea to take Mort Saul, who was a comedian and liberally bent, and put him on a show with a guy named George Putnam, who was a conservative newscaster, who was actually supposedly the person that Ted Knight based his character on the Mary Tyler Moore Show on.
Wow.
On basically George Putnam. And they would get on and they would have a studio audience and they would talk about things. And then you could just tell at some point that Putnam was there to just to make, people mad. And so this whole thing goes back to, it still all goes back to wrestling. It's still all carny type stuff. I mean, it's let's get
Sure.
a couple people out there from the show was called Both Sides now. And they would get out there and they would, some of the audience would say, oh, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. I mean, this people think this is something brand new that happens with social media and television now, but that stuff's been going on since the 1950s.
Yeah. I mean, of course, we saw that same thing happen with Jerry Springer, and he had his moment in the sun and all that. And as somebody who watches wrestling as much as I do, I don't know why that always bothered me that thing was, I'd watch something like that, or like the reality shows of today and go, oh, that's so fake.
I know.
That really annoys me, how fake this thing is. Or like Hogan's old so-called reality show, Hogan Knows Best. That used to infuriate me because I said, this is absolute bullshit. And I said, wait a minute. Hold on a second. The whole thing I like is a little hard to
that's the whole thing with any kind of these reality shows. They do that all the time. I was up in the balcony one time of a theater, and they were interviewing people for Last Comic Standing. And they would sit them down, they would talk to them, and they would say something. And then the guy would say, oh, listen, this guy said that he thought you were a hack and you were horrible. What do you want to say about that? And then the guy would respond, and then he would say, don't you think you ought to be a little more angry about that? I mean, it was basically they were just prompting them all the way through. There's nothing real about reality television. Never, ever, ever.
Well, the Springer Show really got big on the wrestling bug. I mean, everyone knows by this point.
Yeah.
And at first it started, like, I think with some serious things, like they had Razor Ramon on to give, like, a sick kid the Intercontinental belt. And then eventually it just became like, hey, this guy works in Tennessee. Let's see if we can pay him to come up here and claim that, he got some girl pregnant or something. Scott, do you know anything about that? Did Greg Greenland get involved with that, with the Springer Show?
Yeah, he appeared on the Springer Show, and so did our friend, the late Harry White.
Yeah.
Yeah. Harry was hilarious. And Greg was good too, because they both said the experience of doing the show and what went on backstage was far more fascinating and far more bizarre than the worked thing that made the air. They said, because most of the people that went on that show really were crazy fans and crazy fans of the show and outrageous, weird characters that just wanted to be on TV. And they said one of the things that they would respect you for was to tell them outright, the understanding was you were going to come on, they were going to give you a framework of who your character was and what your particular problem or what your role was, and then things were going to go like they usually go, arguments or fights or what have you. But they said they would respect you for out and out saying, I won't do this, I won't do that, other than that. Because they said most of these crazy people that would go on Springer would say, I love this show, I'll do anything to be on this show. And that's how you'd get this insane stuff going on. They'd say, oh, well, then you're a grown man that dresses in a diaper. And, so both Greg and Harry both were specific in saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, I want, and so forth. And they both said that having several days or several weeks of Springer Show guests all locked into a room where they were all allowed to smoke inside this enclosed room, they said the green room was the real show. They said you should have just filmed the green room and forget about the stage version of the Springer Show. And then I remember at some point they were using people like Jamie Dundee was like a guest coordinator. You could imagine they used him several times as a guest, and also to wrangle other people. No big surprise, from the circus world or the wrestling world or the carnival world to come on there as guests. Just absolutely crazy.
I actually
had a friend
and being. I'm sorry, Dan. I remember watching Springer and just being like, I can't believe this shit is airing in the morning on TV, and no one makes a stink about it. And then they all made a stink about it. But anyway, Dan, what were you going to say?
Oh no, I started to say I have a friend who was in an improv class, and they contacted the improv class and they said Springer would like to bring two people in. And we'll give them different scenarios, and they can wing it. Do we have anybody that can do that? I mean, that's what it got down to toward the end. They were bringing in ringers at some point just to say, can you? It's kind of like when I was. They called me up one time when I was as an imposter on one of the variation remakes of To Tell the Truth, and they said to me, "Do you think you can BS about movies or falafels? Which one would you rather do?" Okay, so I'll take silent movies. Okay, fine. And they bring you in and they train you and they work with you, and that's kind of what they do on some of these reality shows. They sit you down and they go over everything and they tell you what they want and how to play the game and how to do it. And that's what they do in these reality shows. That's why I always laugh when people get so worked up over The Bachelor and stuff, or any of those kind of shows, because I mean the whole thing is just so set up. I mean, wrestling. Wrestling booking is sometimes more subtle than a lot of these reality shows.
Just for my purposes, who were your celebrities when you were on To Tell the Truth?
Oh boy, you're going to love this. Well, the host at that point was John O'Hurley, who was Mr. Peterman on Seinfeld. And we had Misach Taylor from Golden Girls. We had Hattie Winston, who was on the TV show Becker, and I think she was also on The Electric Company at one point. Had a soap opera guy that I am not familiar with, and Brooke Burns from Baywatch. No, it's either Brooke Burns or Brooke. I get confused which one it was. It was the blonde hair one that broke her neck several years ago. That's the only way I remember it. Yeah, but celebrities was kind of putting it nicely.
Dan, how many different talk shows / panel shows have you actually appeared on? Or game shows, I guess you should say.
Well, game shows I did To Tell the Truth, and then I also did one. I just put this up recently on my Facebook page because I ran across some old pictures. I did one against 100, which was a miserable experience. And I did the very first VH1 game show called My Generation.
I remember that. Yeah.
You remember that? It was always two people from one year against the two people from another year. And we went in to do that. And it was so weird because we were winning all the way through to the end. And then all of a sudden, they had this au pair and another guy who sold insurance. And the guy who sold insurance woke up during the bonus round and got every question right. And I can't find the show anymore, but I swear to God, at one point when it was over, after we'd been defeated, I turned to my partner and I mouthed the words like, "What the fuck just happened?" Because we were so far ahead at that point. And they gave us, I got some pens, some fancy pens that VH1 was putting out, and I got a pair of inline roller skates. Which is something you want to give a man who was over 40 at that point, is a pair of inline rollers. I tried to sell those things 3 times on eBay, and nobody would ever buy them. I mean, that's how bad they were.
Perhaps if you throw in some fancy pens.
The pens are actually kind of nice. I did those, and then I for a while, actually, because I was on a list, they would call me in to do run-throughs, and they would pay me. To test out new game shows. I think I actually did the early testing of Press Your Luck with the whammy thing. I thought this will never work. That shows how much I knew. But I would come in and do those kind of things and stuff like that. But the 1 versus 100 was the one that was the worst because I spent 2 days there and made $35.
Which one is 1 versus 100?
It was
the British lady?
people.
No. Okay.
No, that was no. This was one that was Bob Saget hosted this one, and it was 100 people, and then one person, and they would ask a question, and the person would answer it, and then they would eliminate in the 100 portion whoever got it wrong. And the trick was, if they got all the way down to, if she beat all 100, or the mob, as they called it, then she won like the grand prize, or he won the grand prize. The trouble was that we did the show, and the computer equipment kept breaking down. And the guys that ran the show were two of the biggest assholes that I'd ever seen in my entire life. They insulted the people on the show. They threatened to pull everybody off the show. And they said, you guys aren't making enough noise. You guys aren't making, wave your hands, jump up and down and scream and yell. So my section up at the top just basically started flipping them off with obscene gestures at that point. Just so we'll guarantee that. But I put it up on my Facebook. Maybe I'll put it up again on the on the Facebook online here. But there's a great look on my face which shows you how happy I am at that very moment. Because what they did was a bunch of people got it wrong. I got it wrong, and at that moment they cut to me, and I had this look of real happiness on my face. It was a delightful time. But those things are, I did those for a while here and there, and they were fun to do, and I made a few dollars off them. The best one was, to tell the truth, because I made $3,000 for like 2 minutes worth of work. So that was, and no one ever believed me ever again, because I was such a good liar on that show. It's the old wrestling training coming into play there, where basically if you convince yourself that your story is true, it's hard for people to think you're lying. That's the trick on that show.
Hey, Dan, speaking of pro wrestling, we should probably talk a little bit about pro wrestling so we don't scare off all the listeners here today. And we're going to add someone in a few minutes here, but I am curious. We are recording this on Sunday, the day after the AEW All Out show. And so many of these guys, the Young Bucks, and, various other guys that work there, started in Southern California. I'm just curious, were you ever around these guys? Do you have any experience with the current crop of popular professional wrestlers who started in Southern California?
I started working on shows in 1990, and I did it up until the early 2000s, and then I had a break for about 4 or 5 years, and then came back and started doing some stuff again. I ran into some of the guys. I don't know the Young Bucks. I'd seen them wrestle several times, including a match where there was a tag team out here called the Ballard Brothers, who were twins who dressed in hockey gear. And there was this weird, you talk about weird places to have wrestling matches. There's a place called Frankenstein's out here, which is a large, every weekend they have a comic book autograph and baseball card convention. And across the street was this little house and a big empty parking lot. And this guy had bought the house, and he was selling wrestling stuff out of there, figures and pictures and videotapes and stuff like that. And once a month, he would have a wrestling show. He had a ring in the back of the house. And on a Sunday, we would sit down in the backyard, the back of this place, and they would have a wrestling match. I saw the Young Bucks there for the first time. What I remember most about that card was the Young Bucks and the Ballards fought out of the ring into the parking lot, into the porta toilets that were in the back of the parking lot. And when they both came out, they had the basically the seat of the porta toilet wrapped around their neck. So you can see that they were going for the highbrow. They were going for the highbrow stuff early on.
I literally just asked Jim Cornette a question about that finish from Clash of the Champions 10 on the drive-thru that will be out the day this comes out. But anyway, what were you saying, Scott?
Just that's always funny, the toilet seat around the neck. It shouldn't be, but it is.
Actually, it also had, that show had one of my favorite spots of all time. And that was, there were two guys, a guy named Alcatraz, who wore an orange jumpsuit like he was in prison, against Little Cholo, who was one of the guys on the early days of the Lucha show. What it was, the Lucha show from a couple of years ago. But what happened was they were fighting in a no DQ match. They fought, the ring was right next to the house, and they actually climbed up and climbed onto the roof of the house. And they fought on the roof, and Alcatraz tried to shove Little Cholo down the chimney.
Wow.
And that was one of my favorite moments that I have never seen anyone do that, and I don't think I'll ever see anyone do that ever again.
Yeah, that may be a first.
Yeah. But no, a lot of the guys, I came in a gap period. I didn't know them that well. I had done a couple shows with Joey Ryan at one point. I worked one show with him a couple years ago, but he basically kind of stayed off with his clique and everything, so I didn't really have a lot of contact with them. They all seemed nice. Nothing blew me. Truthfully, nothing blew me away about the Young Bucks at all. I mean, I know they're very, very popular, and I've seen some of their stuff, but there's nothing either that really connects with me on an emotional level with them. I think I'm a little too old for basically fandom for them.
Well, no, I'm 39 and I feel the same way, so I don't know if age is really the factor in determining whether you're a Young Bucks fan or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just, in general, I've always felt that oftentimes, depending upon, what generation you're seeing and what age you are, sometimes, how the first 3 or 4 years that you become a wrestling fan, those are the things that stick out in your head, and those are the guys that you remember and you hold in awe, and not guys, once you're a certain age, and guys especially that are younger than I am when I'm much older. I mean, I had the same thing. I hear a lot of people talk about how much they love the Ultimate Warrior. I was in my 30s when the Ultimate Warrior was popular, and I thought he was one of the worst things I'd ever seen in my life. He was like one or two of the worst things about professional wrestling at that time. So I never really had any kind of appeal to him. Though when he died, I know a lot of guys out here were really heartbroken because he was a childhood idol of theirs. But he was not that when I was a fan.
But yeah, it's whatever you grew up on, no matter what your fandom, where it takes you in later years, or if you go back and start trying to discover talent or wrestling from different areas. But the thing about Hogan, living through the explosion of the early WrestleMania days and Hulkamania and all that stuff, was just that everything was new. You'd see him on The Tonight Show, which you never got to see before. You'd see them on Saturday Night Live or whatever it was. And it was all very new. And even though I'd been a wrestling fan for many years, I say, oh, my God, look at this. They're on shows that other people other than wrestling fans are seeing this mainstream stuff. And it was exciting to see how into it the audiences would get, whether it was him or Warrior or people like that. But, they weren't for me. They were the kind of thing I like. And then casual fans that would start to see new things like that, they'd say that became wrestling because that's what they would see mainstream. So they knew I was a fan, and they'd say things like, well, saw your buddy Hulk Hogan on TV last night. He's the greatest. That's what they do. Yeah. And now today there's we were just talking about a couple of them, it's a feather in their cap that they sell tons of shirts, that they got a Funko Pop doll that you can go buy at Hot Topic or something like that. And is that the measuring stick for how great somebody's doing? Then I guess Hulk Hogan really was the best because he sold a lot of toys.
Well, that's the whole thing with me was when I first started going to the San Bernardino Arena every week, and it ran weekly. What kept me coming back was next week Jesus Calhoun is going to be here. Well, gee, I've seen Jesus Calhoun in the magazines. I want to see him in person. Andre the Giant, all those kind of guys. I kept coming back and back and back. And it built off of that. And again, that was because there was a certain innocence that you had at that point when you first started following wrestling. And it was really easy. Like I said, one of the biggest disappointments I ever had in my entire life was meeting Chief Jay Strongbow, who when I was first started following wrestling, Jay Strongbow was my favorite wrestler. And then I met him one time, and as they always say, you should never meet your idols, because I was really, really disappointed. Not that I expected something else, but I mean, like when I met Roddy Piper, I mean, Piper was wonderful. He was a great guy. And Nick Bockwinkel was great.
There are lots of stories about Jay Strongbow. Yeah, there are lots of horror stories about Jay Strongbow being a dickhead to not just fans, but people in the business, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I had I knew a guy. There was Billy Anderson had a lot of guys that would work enhancement shows, enhancement talent and stuff. And there was a guy that walked up to the chief and he said, honestly, and this is the stupidest thing in the world you can say. He said, "Chief, do you think doing all these jobs is going to hurt my career?" And the chief looked at him and said, "What career?"
Yeah, what a dick. I've heard so many stories from people throughout the years, like wrestlers too, like Bret Hart. In his book, he had a whole thing about, talking about something, just saying, I think if I was positioned right, I could be a big star like Hulk Hogan. And Chief's like, "You hear this? He thinks he could be Hulk Hogan," running around, and like Bret's like, "Oh, come on."
Yeah.
And so many guys have those stories about Strong. Hey, Gary Hart said that he came up to the WWF and his short run got sabotaged because Chief Jay Strongbow was an agent there. That was in 84. So there's lots of stories about Strongbow. Let me add someone because I know they're on standby here. So let me add them here. Type in their name. And that didn't work. There we go. Got his name. Adding him. I think he's going to pick up quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Hello, am I calling episode 100?
No, this is not episode 100. You took 8 seconds to be added to Labor Day Star Wars. How are you, Luke Kippelman? Welcome to Star Wars.
Oh, doing fantastic. Feeling laborious. Yeah, still recovering from 4th of July. How are you guys doing?
We're doing all right. On the line with us right now is the popular wrestling humorist Scott Cornish and the late Dan Farron.
Hello, Lou.
Oh, howdy. How's it going?
Hey, Lou, how you doing?
Oh.
Sounds like Lou's been working very hard.
Well,
I think that's a fair
You
assessment.
sound tired, Lou. Yeah, because you work so hard for the shows and everything. I imagine you're probably exhausted by this time.
He's exhausted. He just had Jeff Bowdrin yelling in his ear for 2 hours.
Yes. Well, something to that effect, yes.
Hey, Lou, before you get too tired, I do have a favor to ask, if you don't mind. I posted something the other day on Twitter and on Facebook. It was something from a collection I recently purchased. It's a memo from March 7th, 1986. Tony Schiavone, Jim Crockett Promotions, listed here as publicity. And it's a letter to a man named Mr. John Zablocki, Avenue D in Brooklyn. And it's a breakdown of the stipulations for upcoming Jim Crockett Promotions events. Any chance I can get you to read some of these?
Yeah. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, I got this collection the other day, and it's just filled with random great stuff. I was telling Dan a little bit off air. It had this, and then like the next thing I have like multiple original 1965 Norm Keitzer newsletters.
Right. I
was like, holy cow, legal size paper, the original ones here. And then I got a St. Louis program addressed to Nat Lubay Wrestling Inc. So I'm like, okay, for those of you who don't know, Nat Lubay ran Ring Wrestling. I'm thinking, how did this collection all of a sudden get a program mailed from the St. Louis Wrestling Club to the guy running Ring Wrestling? So there's all sorts of random stuff. I've got like every single bootleg and outlaw and even WWF spot show run in Brooklyn, like every card just about from like the 80s. Guys that you're hearing on John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight, Bialo the Giant and the Power Twins. I get all of these cards. It's kind of a crazy little collection here. And of course, this memo from Jim Crockett Promotions was one of the things in it.
Yes. Crockett Promotion Stipulations Explained. Yeah, just found it.
All right. This is from, like we said, March 7th, 1986. So months in advance of the Great American Bash Tour that we just reviewed on Jim Cornette's, or on the Jim Cornette Experience, excuse me.
Yes. To a Mr. John Zablocki of Brooklyn, New York. Let's see. Maybe that's why there's an explanation of a Sicilian stretcher match, which I don't recall ever happened in Mid-Atlantic.
where did the Sicilian stretcher match, other than Madison Square Garden?
Like Philly Spectrum.
Yeah.
I want to say I saw one between Backlund and Graham, Superstar Graham.
Well, this letter here, Shivani, begins with, "Thank you for your letter."
Two noted Sicilians, Backlund and Graham.
Yes. Yes, they.
That's actually where you need Chief J. Strongbow.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, then you'd have a Sicilian in the match. Well, this letter here, thank you for your letter on 3/3/86. I hope the following information helps. So we assume that John Zablocki sent the letter 4 days earlier to Crockett Promotions asking about these stipulation matches. And Lou, we're going to go to you first. The No Holds Barred match.
No holds barred match. Many different wrestling alliances and associations have holds, which are not permitted in the ring. In a no holds barred match, these maneuvers are permitted. An example would be the pile driver. It is not permitted in the NWA, but would be allowed in this type of match. All other rules would apply.
Okay, pretty good basic breakdown of a no holds bar match. The next one here, death match, anything goes match, lights out match, no disqualification match, all bracketed together here.
Yes. I have grouped these together because they basically are the same. They are all different ways of saying no disqualification match. Sicilian stretcher match.
I was about to go there. Sicilian stretcher match.
All right. I have no experience on this match, but I remember reading once about a couple of rules. As best as I can remember, the only way the match could end is if a doctor stopped the match and the loser was carried out on a stretcher.
A street fight match.
Much the same as a no disqualification match, except the participants usually dress in street clothes and bring many foreign objects into the ring.
Anywhere in the building match.
I've never heard of many of the matches. However, I do know the rules. As you probably know, a match can end on a countout. That means one or both of the men, or teams, fail to get back into the ring before a referee's 10 count. In this match, the 10 count is eliminated, and the men can battle anywhere, which is legally property of the building in which they are wrestling. Arena floors, dressing rooms, concourses, parking lots, etc. The referee must follow the two where they would happen to go.
Brass knuckles match.
Okay, let me...
This is on page 2. That is why it's taking a second here.
Yeah, I used Chrome to zoom on this.
Well, this must have been torturous for Shivani to sit there and type all this out.
Yeah, no doubt.
Was this somebody's kid he was writing to?
I know. God. I wrote a fanboy letter to Shivani and David Crockett in the summer of '86, and I didn't get shit back. This guy's getting the goddamn National Wrestling Alliance bylaws. I don't know what kind of stroke he had.
Lou,
so let's see.
Do you have it open, page 2?
Oh, let me see. Chrome is being difficult to me. Here we go. Brass knuckles match. This match is like others in that the object is to pin your man for a 3 count. It is different in that the match consists of 10 3-minute rounds, and close fist punching is allowed. It is, in many ways, like a boxing match without gloves. Finally, let me stress that there is a difference between a death match and a Texas death match. In a Texas death match, pins do not count. There is no time limit. After every successful pin, there is a 30-second rest period. At the end of the rest period, the bell rings to begin again. If a man cannot rise to his feet within 10 counts after the bell, then the other is declared a winner. Thanks again for your letter. I've enclosed a copy of our magazine with the basic NWA rules on page 11. I hope you enjoy it. Sincerely, Jim Crockett Promotions. Tony Schiavone, Publicity.
It really makes you just want to write letters to random people and see what you can get back.
Oh, no doubt.
You know, I would pay money. I would pay money for a CD of Lou reading the rules of wrestling, just to listen to it over and over again.
We're going to do that. It's going to be a special for patrons, actually. It's going to be Lou reads the bylaws of the NWA.
They did a thing back in 1976. They released in L.A. the bicentennial rules. I should send those in to you and have Lou read those about what was legal and what was not legal. You know, Texas death matches were not legal and whatever. I love it. Anytime anybody has to explain rules, but Lou, that was great, actually. I think I understand more about those matches now than I did before. I wish everybody who actually put on those matches would actually read that letter.
See, what sucks is this guy wrote this letter in, sent it to Jim Crockett Promotions, and then someone opened it and said, give it to Schiavone. Like it wasn't, I guarantee it wasn't addressed to Tony Schiavone. He didn't sign it Tony Schiavone, the voice of TBS Wrestling. It was Tony Schiavone publicity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Tony Schiavone, dude who does play-by-play for the Charlotte O's and occasionally sweeps up and answers these letters.
That's right. That's right. Man, I got so much weird stuff here. I got this program. It's weird. I got this program in this collection, and then literally the next day I got a package from Tom Burke. An awesome package from Tom Burke, by the way. And this program was in there, too. And I said, Tom, what's the story with this? And I got 3 of these. He goes, oh, I made that. So it is wrestling from Worcester, Massachusetts, July 14th, 1983. Main event, Toru Tanaka versus Victor Rivera. Toru Tanaka managed by Wild Bull Curry. And then I guess it's just a lot of Kowalski guys, I think. Jethro the Gator Man Chambers versus Roberto Soto. Tony the Soul Brother Ulysses versus Rick McGraw with special guest referee Walter Killer Kowalski. It's weird when all of a sudden he uses the name Walter, like even in his own programs. Richard Burns versus Ricky Sexton. Dan Petty versus David Starr. And Rudy Diamond versus Bob Van Winkle. Bell time 8 p.m. and the ring announcer is Mel Simmons. So there we go. Another thing I got there. And that led nowhere.
So Richard Burns, did Richard Burns have a STD gimmick?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Lou, did you watch the event last night?
Oh, no, I'm way too cheap to do that. I think I caught maybe the last couple of minutes of the buy-in. Just Jim Ross and Excalibur running down the card.
All right.
Yeah.
Nothing to talk about there. Then.
Exactly. No, I've had more fun reading the thread in the Mothership and reading your tweet storm on it. And then
that wasn't a tweet storm. That wasn't a tweet storm.
Well, I mean, it was you picking up the Twitter fungo bat and you know swinging away on various goofs on Twitter. Oh, you're a WWE chill. How long have you been on their payroll?
Well, that one I like because when the guy said that to me, all I'm thinking is, I wonder how much he thinks they're paying me. So that was my response to him. How much do you think they're paying for my shilling? And he never responded. You know, I was actually really curious. They're paying me to go on Twitter and do commentary about what I'm watching on AEW. Not all of it was negative. I like Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'm a shill. I was shocked when I saw that. I was a shill for the WWE. I was like, this is the greatest tweet of all time. I got to retweet this.
Well, yeah, he's got you dead to rights, man.
Yeah. People are like, have you heard any of his shows? Do you have any idea who this man that you follow is? But I guess not. Dan, when was the last time you went to a live show?
A couple months ago, I went to a lucha show. I'm mostly Kurt and I usually just go to local lucha shows. Though I think I may be going to a show this Friday night because a friend of mine wrote a book about Star Wars, and he's actually doing an autograph session there at a wrestling show, which I find very interesting. We went to a lucha show a couple months ago, and it's always a lot of fun. It's to me, it's the way that wrestling was when I first started watching it. It's in a small, hot building with no air conditioning. People selling nachos and T-shirts and the guys walking through the crowd. And it was the most really amazing was that I still am blown away by the fact that people get so excited at a show that they actually throw money in the ring afterwards.
Yeah,
I mean that's like the best compliment in the world. I mean, no other wrestling outside of lucha has a tip jar in the corner. That's what it feels like. And these guys went out there and they just banged around, and people were throwing dollar bills in afterwards. Plus, also my favorite thing is the people who sit in the front row and get knocked down on a regular basis by the wrestlers, because for lucha fans, they basically understand if you sit close to the ring, you're going to get knocked down. And I think I even put a little video up of a couple luchadors fighting in the front row and kept falling on top of this lady. Just kept repeatedly falling on top of this lady. But it feels like the wrestling that I used to go to. It doesn't feel like big old corporate wrestling. It feels like mom and pop next door neighbor wrestling, and that's what I enjoy going to see.
What do you think of the big differences? I mean, obviously it's a little different now than it would have been in the 1990s, but from when you were around there in the 1990s, or even today, what are the big differences in the crowds between a lucha show, a local lucha show, and a local show, just a local indie show that has no lucha components whatsoever?
With the lucha audience comes in and they're very, and they talk to the wrestlers, and because the whole idea of lucha is that the technicos and the rudos, they're not that way in real life. That's their style of wrestling in the ring. So it makes it a little bit easier. They don't have to kayfabe as much. But the funny thing about it is you'll see people come in and they'll be talking to wrestlers and just, chatting very, nonchalantly or whatever. But what happens is when it gets really heated up in the ring, they really, really, really get mad and really get upset and really storm the ring and pound on the apron and do stuff like that, which I haven't seen since the 1970s in many cases. Most of the fans that I see now that go to regular wrestling shows, they're mostly families and with kids, and maybe the little kids will get all excited or whatever. But kind of like what a couple people indicated on the Facebook page today was people really don't get as much excited as they used to. And I remember, that I used to, in San Bernardino, I used to see cops. There were two cops. There was one cop would be there to back up the other cop, and then somebody, rush the ring or whatever, they would like grab him in the chokehold and drag him up the aisle away from there and throw people out or arrest them or do stuff like that. And, it's so nonchalant now. It's just the audience feels like they're in on the show as opposed to being, upset by it or heightened by it. I mean, it's a fascinating change. And that's why I always feel that people talk about wrestling, going back to the way it was. For it to go back to the way it was, you would have to completely re-educate the audience back to that again. And I just don't think that's possible.
Last night on the show, I watched it, obviously, because we're reviewing it on the Jim Cornette Experience, and I'm watching it on my TV. Perfect quality, good sound. And I didn't think the crowd was that noisy at times. I thought the crowd died more and more as the show went on. And there were points like during the Young Bucks match where I thought they were totally silent. And then a "This is awesome" chant started, and then it got silent. And then a "Fight Forever" chant, or maybe it was the other way around. And then it got silent. And I'm reading on Twitter some people that were there, they were like, "Oh, the audience was great. They were really into everything." And I was like, really? Did it just not translate? Or is it that now the audience is great if they just sit there and don't boo? Like, what is a great audience? Because, Scott, you didn't see it, did you, Scott?
I did see it, yeah.
What did you think of the audience last night?
Well, the show is too long, and that audience is their biggest fans. People that spent considerable time and money and effort to get to that show, and they're out of gas by the 4th, 5th hour.
Yeah.
But still, people that pay the premium price for those top seats, you can see them very busy on their phones. You got me. I don't know why you'd go to all that expense and effort and then sit there staring at your phones. I don't know. It may not be true of the whole building, and certainly, yeah, there must have been. The audience that shows up for that and sells out a building like that is an enthusiastic audience that wants to be part of the big event and is very excited for everything to happen. So, you've got to, if it's happening early where they're silent, I don't know what to tell you. You're not doing something right. And later in the show, they had very little left for those two top big matches, and it's a strange thing to see. Audiences love to chant, and that's all there is to it. And every single one of those.
Thank you, Philadelphia. Thank you.
Oh, but now that stuff is so tired, you've seen it on many different shows by many different promotions. They're chanting, "This is awesome," when nothing has happened. They're waiting for something. Oh, I guess that was good. Now it's time for Fight Forever. Everything is tired. Although I've got to give credit, there was a really insane, enthusiastic audience in Cardiff yesterday for the NXT UK show. But they have like soccer chants and songs that they like to sing. And that goes on, and even that can be annoying. They're very enthusiastic, but sometimes, again, it's just a game. We want to sing. We want to, who am I to say if that's that's how you want to have fun at a wrestling show? But sometimes it can even be very distracting. But I've got to give them credit for the best chant I have heard in years. And one of the first I've heard that was really unusual is in the main event between Walter, the title match with the NXT champion Walter against Tyler Bate. At one point, the audience began chanting, "Walter is a wanker." And I went, "God bless you, NXT." Cardiff crowd.
During that AEW show, they're chanting "Fight Forever." I'm chanting "End at 10. End at 10." It's going on for hours. End the fucking show.
They're saying,
"Where's the curfew?"
Oh man, it does, because each match feels like it goes at least 20 minutes. That hardcore match last night, I'm not a fan of that shit. But if it goes like 7 minutes, okay, it did what its purpose was. That thing was like 20 minutes. It just kept going and going, and I'm like, Jesus, when does this end? It's one thing if the fans are all jumping up and down and going crazy. No one's jumping. No one's yelling. No one's throwing their arms in the air. They look at their phone or they turn to the person next to them.
Somebody did bring up the pattern. I don't think it's true of every group. It certainly seems to be true of these AEW shows, is that they feel the need to put a match, something for everybody on the show. We want a big stunt ladder match. We want a hardcore match. We want 2 women wrestling. We want a dumb battle royal.
Where's Tony Schiavone with the stipulations?
He must have been busy writing letters. He didn't show up at all last night.
Yes, he's looking at the new bylaws of the Star Trek universe for the next stipulation match.
Yeah, he was trying to write down the rules to the Cracker Barrel match, and then he jumped out a window, I think.
There was a point, I'm watching it last night, and there are people who think it's just the greatest thing ever and they love it. And I'm watching it and I'm thinking, maybe I'm not a wrestling fan. Like maybe I've been wrong all these years because I don't enjoy this the way a lot of other people seem to be.
You've been living a lie and you weren't aware of it up until now.
I didn't know. Listen, I was watching it, and then I heard some people say like that Young Bucks match was so great. I was like, really? I mean, I know they did some crazy, stupid spots, but that was another one where the crowd died, where guys just stood around waiting for something to happen. There's too much of like the choreographed wrestling in general is bad, but on this show there were several points where the choreography broke down and the other guy would try to tell the other guy what to do. Like at one point I saw Kenny Omega like, come at me, or whatever, point, like it's just, it's not for me. I'm realizing more and more. Instead of complaining about why it's not what I like, I just got to realize wrestling will never be what I like ever again. But
I wonder.
I still have the, the magazines and the tapes and the Jack Flipper stories, so I'm okay.
Well, things happen. Certainly things happen. I saw a couple of things that I really liked on the NXT show, and there were some things I saw on the AEW show, which was just the show was too long and everything, just about everything on it was too long. But, it has its moments, but I don't know. Is every show going to be like that? I'm so over. I brought this up before, but I'm so over breaking tables. It does nothing for me. And you think how long that's been going on? 20 years. And now that ladder match is painful ladder spots, breaking tables, and that's it. Right. Not this real struggle. How are they going to get past these guys? Oh my God!
Yeah,
they must really want those titles.
Yeah, are we going to have spines get slammed on ring aprons for the next quarter of a century?
Well, wait till you see the Darby Allin bump, Lou, if you haven't seen it already with the cracker.
Oh, I saw that. I saw that on Twitter, and I'm like, okay.
Which match was I watching? Now I can't remember, where the guy just moonsaulted to the floor to nothing. Do you remember, Scott? There was one point, I forget what match it was now.
That must have been the same match. I think it was Janela.
That's right. It was Janela during that match. He does a moonsault to the floor. It's not like the move where the guy rolls away at the last second. He must have rolled away before the camera was on, because he was nowhere in sight, and you just see Janela go flying to the floor, and you're just thinking, man, this guy's stupid. We just see him.
And they've got other, and in that same match, they've got absolutely ridiculous fake spots involving staple guns and paper cuts. and they get the same reaction as that kind of stuff. Well,
with Janela, I can't help but think that first it was a Double or Nothing, was it? But it might have been the gimmick battle royal there, where they had an announce table that was just there and not used. It was only there for the specific purpose of having Luchasaurus chokeslam Janela through it at some point. It was just like, boy, that's ring psychology.
I remember that first not Double or Nothing, the first All In card a year ago. They had broken tables 5 different matches on that first show.
Getting the table gets as big a pop as breaking the table.
Yeah.
Just pulling up the ring curtain and showing them that you're going to get a table. You get that pop. It'll get a bigger pop most nights than when they finally put the guy through it.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of the fans that it's an anticipation thing. I think it's weird. I think what happens is they get so excited because the tickets are coming out and they're online. They're trying to get tickets, so they get the best tickets they can. And then they travel with their friends and they tailgate beforehand. So by the time they actually get inside and the matches start, they're exhausted. I mean, they've been, I can't wait to get here. And now we're here. And then, they're tired. They're not going to see the whole excitement of getting there and getting the tickets and being present for that. It's like it's like a few minutes after Christmas morning. They've opened up the gifts and now they got nothing left.
Yeah, and I wonder how much overlap there was with Starrcast 3. The number of people who went to both. Yes. That was a rhetorical question. No, there can be too much. I mean, I think you see it all the time sometimes, especially on WrestleMania weekends and stuff, when they set up all this stuff. I mean, every 15 minutes there's a card starting someplace. It gets to be too much. I've been a fan since 1971. I can very easily get burned out after more than 2 or 3 things in a row that way. I can't imagine, doing that for an entire weekend. I mean, at least thank God with Cauliflower Alley, you can sleep in the hotel. So when you get tired, you just go upstairs and lay down. You don't have to travel back and forth. And I do think that, there could be too much of something. When I went to the matches, there were 4 matches on a show. They would do one match, do an intermission, do another match, do another intermission, and then the last 2 matches, and that was it. I mean, it was a slower pace. It was like baseball,
And it's too much of everything. Like you said before, They try to jam everyone in. They try to have something for everyone to do. But the show goes on forever. And I don't know. I'm going to watch the NXT one. I'm going to try to get Jim to watch the NXT one. Because enough people have gotten in touch and said, Jim needs to watch the NXT one instead of AEW. He's going to watch the AEW one, but I think we may have to do the NXT one. But I don't know. I just don't know. I want an alternative to WWE, and I watch AEW, and I'm like, these guys are doing WWE. That battle royal, that women's battle royal was lame WWE stupidity. Those backstage segments where Cody's walking down the hallway with everyone joining him. These theatrical openings where Sean Spears is sitting there in silhouette or sitting there in, no, not silhouette, but they have a spotlight on him and he's sitting in the chair. This is a fucking grudge match. Why is he sitting in a chair? He should be running to the ring and ready to punch the shit at the guy he's feuding with.
They had a vignette introducing a new wrestler last night.
Oh, yeah, Waldorf. Yeah. I saw that.
Wardlow, or, yeah.
What's his name? I thought it was Waldorf. What? It's not Waldorf?
No, it's not. Yeah, when he'll get a load of his partner Statler. They are unbeatable. Their cutting remarks are the worst.
Waldorf.
But they had it was set up. The vignette was set up like a scene from a bad movie, where he and his female assistant, but he faces down this group of tough guys, and thankfully, just like in a bad movie, the tough guys surround Wardlow. Then they each take their turn charging him, because if they all ganged up on him at once, that would be unfair.
Right. But, code of the street. You never try to gain an advantage.
Right.
I'm gonna bet that was filmed by Moxley's buddy who filmed the Moxley vignettes. It's the same look. I think it was filmed by the same people who did the Moxley vignettes, but it was too.
He wanted to get on the show last.
But I mean, Moxley's buddy at least has good contained narratives in the videos he's done.
This had a good narrative. Waldorf and his girlfriend are in the parking lot, and these hoodlums who know how to take lucha bumps are there, and they're ready to confront him one at a time. He chokeslams, he grabs one out of the air by the neck, and it's so ridiculous because now you're supposed to think he goes to meet with some director, like, listen, my name's Waldorf. I'm about to debut for All Elite Wrestling. I need a promotional video to show these people just who I am. Make sure there's a chick so they know I like chicks. And I beat up a white guy and a black guy and a Hispanic guy all at the same time.
Exactly. Taking down the United Colors of Benetton on some generic rooftop.
Yeah, they've got to have inclusion even during a beatdown.
Yeah, it's so preposterous and
unnecessary. Put in the Matrix camera effects and all that crap too. Wardlow. Okay, that'll be a great chant.
I would pay money. I would pay money to the listener that brings a Waldorf and Statler puppet to an All Elite show when Waldorf comes out and just starts playing with it. Don't do anything to see that. Bonus points if you bring a New Zealand.
Oh, very nice.
And just throw a fish.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I want an alternative, but I want an alternative not to WWE, but to that style, that look. I want something that everyone doesn't have to. How many guys fucking danced to the ring last night? How many guys, their music hits, they come out, they pose, and they dance? I'm thinking, when I was a kid, did anyone dance to the fucking ring? I mean, Coco Ware had a bird, and he was singing his own fucking song. He danced. But there were so many guys just dancing out to the ring. Everyone has to pose. That's the first thing I'll do if I had a wrestling promotion. Bye-bye stage. Bye-bye runway. Let's make it a little more gritty and start with that. But goddamn, it's just, I want an alternative to the look and the feel of every modern wrestling promotion. It doesn't have to be a classic wrestling thing. It doesn't have to be all nostalgia, but it just has to apply the things that worked and the things that made sense and the things that made me a fan. And I'm not getting that much of it. I want angles and interviews more than I want alleged 5-star matches. This has been Brian Last for the 605 Super Podcast.
And now, page 2. Brian last. Good day. And I'm really dating myself there.
Any thoughts? Any thoughts on my soliloquy there? Anyone?
Well, bring back the librarians.
Well, they were there. They were there in the,
were they?
In the opening battle royal. Where,
okay, again, more librarians then.
This is where if the WWE did it, everyone would lose their mind. But because it's all elite and they're cute, they get away with it. All elite is basically, these are the things we wanted to do in the WWE, but even Vince would be like, no, we're not.
Have you heard the latest take, though, on the librarians is the most insane thing I've ever heard. The gimmick is supposed to be bad.
That makes perfect sense.
They're winking at these lame gimmicks by presenting a bad gimmick on purpose.
Unfortunately, it's not their eye that's winking, I think, when it comes to this. No. The one librarian, the girl, Leva Bates, she was in the Battle Royal and she got eliminated and she was upside down, but because her feet didn't touch the ground, the other librarian, Ponytail, he comes out there and he puts books on the ground so she could step on the books to get back in the ring because she didn't step on the ground. And I'm thinking, this is WWE level garbage. I know there's an audience that likes the silliness and the hokiness. I get it, but it's too schizophrenic if you're going to try to have a serious wrestling product to have the level of banality that some of this shit is on this fucking show. But anyway, I had to watch it.
It's not just their that.
If for anyone out there saying, if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. No, I legitimately had to watch it. It was my job this week to fucking watch this shit. So anyway, go ahead, Scott.
Well, it's not just their problem, but they say they want to present a serious wrestling product, but they don't really. They didn't grow up watching a serious wrestling product. They grew up watching a dumb wrestling product.
See, what scares me is that I think that they think this actually is serious wrestling product. I mean, I really think they're not going back far enough. I think you make a really good point, Brian. Yeah, they can't. I mean, you're making a really good point. It's not that I don't want modern wrestling. I just don't want this. That's what it comes down to.
And I talked a little bit about this. I don't remember if it's something I aired already or didn't with Jim Cornette, where I said, I was actually playing devil's advocate a little and saying, if you grew up and you never saw Mid-Atlantic or Mid-South or Florida or Georgia or whatever it may be, and you never got into tapes, you only grew up and watched wrestling that was on TV, and then let's say you got to be a big enough fan of it that you started seeing indies or getting DVDs or streams of Ring of Honor or Pro Wrestling Guerrilla or whatever. But, that's you. You grew up, and within the last 10 years, you became a hardcore fan, got into the modern stuff, trained to be a wrestler. I mean, it's hard for me to think you would know better. I mean, to them, they know better. But if you actually don't know the way things were done, and why would they? They grew up on WWE. At best, they maybe saw Nitro. I mean, they never saw anything in the 80s.
Yeah, if they went on a deep dive, they got to see Nitro and Thunder, too.
So if you grew up watching all this silly fucking shit on WWE Raw, you think your silly shit's good, too. You just want to do your silly shit.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Now, the modern wrestling ring, that's where irony goes to die very quickly. It's like, boy, if you're trying to be detached and meta, no, you don't have the skills to do that. So why are you even attempting it and wasting valuable airtime?
Yeah. And there are a bunch of groups out there now, very small groups, but whatever, and they've got a built-in excuse for everything. If you see something stupid and you say, that strikes me as kind of stupid, they just say, oh, well, you don't understand. Wrestling has evolved and changed. It's supposed to be funny and fun. Really, every dumb thing you do is fantastic and represents some kind of an evolution to what you might refer to as an art form.
The argument would hold up better if there were more fans attending than there used to be. And it's the exact opposite. There are less fans watching, less fans attending. So maybe you should try it the other way. As a businessman, that's what I would look at. How do we make things better?
It's astonishing to see some of those big AEW trainees, or signees, I'll say, and see that they must get a nosebleed when they come out in front of a 10,000-seat arena, because then you see, oh, here they were 2 nights ago in front of 120 people. These giant super signings that they've made, It must be dizzying to see them work those tiny, tiny shows and then turn around and every couple of months get to work a huge one.
When I was working on local shows here, I actually had a guy come up to me and say, I want to do this angle. And I said, okay. And he said, and we're going to finish it, do the whole thing this evening. I said, well, why do you want to do the whole thing this evening? Why don't we do the setup, and then next month we can bring it back and maybe even take it a little bit further if you want to. He goes, no. He says, the audience doesn't have the attention span for that. We have to do it all in one night. And I was horrified by this. I was just absolutely horrified. I said,
he's not wrong, though. they really don't have that attention span anymore.
They really don't. No, that's the sad part about it is he really isn't wrong. It's wrong to everything that we know, but for most audience members, that's the way they are.
Well, we've killed the show.
This is all a sham. We should just end it. Let's just end it, Brian, right now. That's all. We found the end of the internet. We found the end of professional wrestling. It's ended right now. Let's mark the time and the date, and then we'll just call it.
Let me pick up some of these random cards here I got.
Okay.
Here's a show. Sunday, October 21st, 1984, Ridgewood Groves Arena, Professional Wrestling. The United States Wrestling Association. A bloody confrontation of championship, but this is handwritten. A bloody confrontation of championship of heavyweight, international champion, CWA champion. White Feather versus Concrete Cowboy. Vince Coelho versus the Golden Boy. Impact #1 versus the Cavemen. And there's a slash, so the Cave/Men. Mike Colon versus the Red Demon. Impact #2, versus Goliath. Each and every Sunday, live entertainment plus live entertainments of all kind. Dancing, singing, DJ, disco, American and Spanish, Latin, Lating. Latin. All of this follows right after the wrestling show, all for the same price, a family day Sunday. And then if I go to the other side, there's another show coming up. This one was October 21st. November 28th, 1984, same building, Lucha Libre. A bloody tag team match, Mike Colon and the Iron Hand versus the Red Demon and the Assassin. Captain America versus Bronco the Arabian. Who the fuck is that?
Bronco the Arabian.
Blackjack versus the Exotic Man. The Inspector versus Goliath. Al Rubinsky versus the Golden Boy. Hurricane Soto versus the Revenger. Revenger, not Avenger. The Revenger. Petro Rodriguez, Petro, versus the Dogman. And Royo Velez versus the Italian Prince. Friday, live entertainment, teenagers and disco up to 10 p.m. Saturday, live, 12-piece band. Ladies free. Sunday, disco and talent scout entertainment. So there's some of the action happening in Queens.
Wow.
In 1984.
Yeah.
What was the year?
84.
84. I'm thinking about putting together a collection. I'm kind of half joking, half serious. I would love to, because I have so much of this stuff now, and I want to compile more. And doing your Resi show, I've become increasingly interested in the New York and Northeast indie scene between, let's say, the Backlund years and 1990, the Herb Abram years. It's a real weird and wild scene there. I was thinking about calling the book Not the Garden. Just everything else that took place. Because like even the Mike O'Hara interview, which everyone will hear on episode 100, which should be out, before Christmas. On that interview, Mike talks about going to some of those Vega International shows in like Upper Manhattan, where he was the only white guy there. And they had like, Lucha Libre guys, they would fly in, and they had WWF undercard guys working in good spots.
Yeah.
And, I'm really interested in because there's nothing about it. There's nothing about Northeast independent wrestling or the New York scene specifically between the late 70s when it was outlaw and then when it just became independent wrestling by the late 80s.
Do you suppose back in 1984 that the Iron Hand and the Dog Man and those guys were sitting in the locker room going, we're changing the business.
Well, I can tell you, I remember the memorable program between Bronco the Arabian and Wilbur the Clydesdale.
Bronco the Arabian. How does that happen?
That is, the blow-off match was a loser gets gelded.
All right, I got some more cards here. Hold on. Let me read another one.
Oh, boy.
This is this is actually, I think, a Pro Wrestling USA show. FDR High School, November 22nd, 1985. AWA Championship match, Giant Kamala with Skandar Akbar versus Rick Martel. Handicap match, the Mighty Igor, Polish Strongman versus Gypsy Rodriguez and Manny Devil Soto. Wow. A special added attraction, a live Buddy Rogers corner. Oh, wow.
Wow.
Larry Winters versus Johnny Rods. Midget match, Butch Cassidy versus the Haiti Kid. And in the opener, Pete Sanchez versus Dominic DeNucci. And there's a wrestling hotline here, a 212 number. I'm assuming it is not the Dominic Valente wrestling hotline. And then this is... See, again, this one, I think this is from Brooklyn. September 7th, 85. Samoan 1 versus David Schultz. The Mad Russians versus Tonga 1 and Samoan 2. Charlie Fulton versus Johnny Raj. The Great Coquina, that would have been Yokozuna, versus Jules Strongbow. Butch Cassidy versus the Haiti Kid. And Ray Apollo versus Dominic DeNucci.
Boy.
I got a bunch of ones here from the Brooklyn Roller Rama. I asked Arezi about that. He said that's when they would do shows at the roller skating rink. Here's one. Siaka Pro presents, the United Wrestling Federation and All-Star TV Wrestling Show, January 16th, 1987, Sheepshead Bay High School, Brooklyn, Avenue X. 2 big main event matches. Polish Power, Ivan Putski versus Dr. D, David Schultz, the EWA champ. Also, a return grudge lumberjack match for the IWF belt between the unpredictable Johnny Rods, who's the IWF champ, and Man Mountain. Mountain Man Moore. 350 pounds from the French Isle. 2 big tag team matches. Tony Gurria and David Sammartino versus T.T. Krunsky and Gino Carabello, plus Bialo the Giant and the Cheetah Kid versus Mario Mancini and the Mongol. Special bonus world-famous midget match. The IWF manager Frankie Longo brings home from Los Angeles, California, special guest star, the Haiti Kid. Charlie Fulton versus the Mad Irishman Larry Finnegan and Larry Santog, that's one of the Power Twins, versus the Destroyer. Contact Joey Cosenza for further information, or Richie D. So this is a Tommy D show. If I see the name D there, I'm going to assume that. But yeah.
I wonder why the Irishman was so mad.
Here's one. David Bruno Sammartino versus the Ace Cowboy Bob Orton, managed by Paulie Dangerously. Abdullah the Butcher versus Ted Arcidi. Abdullah's managed by Sheik Ali Abdullah. S.D. Jones versus Luscious Johnny V. Salvatore Bellomo versus Ron Shaw. The Mad Russian with Eric the Red versus Brooklyn's own Bialo the Giant with manager Frankie Longo. And in the opener, Mike Sundance versus Gino Carabello. $12 ringside, $10 bleachers. Tickets available at the door, 6:30 p.m. the day of the show, or you can go to MGM Video on Avenue L.
Look how all those WWF guys were still around, just grinding it out in these little gyms. My God!
Wow.
Talk amongst yourselves while I put this all away.
Wow, that's boy.
That's a little hidden subset of wrestling that I had never. I've been a fan since like the 1970s, and I don't ever remember hearing about that active of a scene up in the Brooklyn area there. I mean, it's amazing.
Oh,
And
I'm surprised they couldn't get a Frankie Williams from Columbus, Ohio, in one of their main events.
Maybe he was a dog man. You never know.
Oh yeah, it could be.
It's nothing compared to what it is now, though. They're at whatever level you choose to watch it. There's independent wrestling everywhere you can possibly imagine, everywhere you go. As growing up, or even as a young fan, going back 10 or 20 years, there was no such thing up where I live in upstate New York as independent wrestling. Just nothing. You might get one thing in one town or a fair show or something like that, maybe once a year. And now right here where I'm living near Utica, there's 2 different promotions that regularly are putting on shows. Just it's unreal. And down in the New York area, especially in Brooklyn, multiple shows everywhere you go, every weekend, of all different types. And they all stink. But I've never seen anything like it as now. So I don't know what it is, because I don't go to a lot of it. I mean, is it the new punk rock? Is this really, what it's something that's going to evolve into the next step, or are there just a bunch of badly produced little shows going on everywhere? I don't know.
Right. And that's one of the things out here in the Bay Area. There are a few indie promotions that run on a regular basis. All Pro Wrestling, you've heard of, and they've run at the Cow Palace a couple of times. Yeah. Something else called West Coast Pro Wrestling. I think they're a relatively new promotion. And then there's a promotion in the Oakland area, I think, called Hood Slam, which
I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been there, and I'm not familiar with their whole milieu there, but I think one of their big chants is "fuck the fans." So I think
who chants that?
I believe the fans do. In another meta chant. Then again, I have very little knowledge of Hood Slam, so I'll reserve judgment. But it's like, okay. So it's like, it seems like it's, I don't know if it's like taking on a sort of universe of itself, a kind of persona like Chikara or something. But yeah, that's Hood Slam.
Or maybe they're just embarrassed that they actually came to the show and they feel bad about it, and they need to let people know that they're embarrassed by it. No, I'm joking. I'm not.
Gentlemen,
of course not.
Gentlemen,
maybe they're just chanting at the 2 female wrestlers on the card.
Well, gentlemen, a press release has come in from the Empire Wrestling Federation in Comac, New York. December 12th, 1983 press release. Recently, the Empire Wrestling Federation made a tour through Ohio. Stops included Washington Courthouse and Mansfield. The match, MATCHS. The matches held in these cities were exciting and full of action and surprises. Featured wrestlers included the likes of Bobo Brazil, the world-famous Original Sheik, exciting as ever, Luis Martinez, Killer Kong, Eddie Miranda, the Russian Assassin, Motorcycle Warrior, and Ivan Duco. Featured tag team action included the Impactos, Chief Bobby Whitefeather, and Chief Red Cloud. Also on hand was Johnny Valiant and his younger brother, Jules Valiant. Who the fuck is that? Jules Valiant. Featured attractions included midgets Danny Carpenter and Little Diamond Jim. Girl attractions included Tina Carr and Yvette Duco. I'm guessing she's related to Ivan Duco. As a bonus match up there was a mixed tag team match. The match included a girl and a midget wrestler against a girl and a midget. Yvette Duco and Little Diamond Jim against Danny Carpenter and Tina Carr. It was a lively and fun bout. The Empire Wrestling Federation will return to Ohio in the near future, as well as holding matches in New York and in New Jersey. And I have here a card from Washington Courthouse Fair, November 26, 83. The main event, Luis Martinez, the Ohio State champion, versus the Sheik, the USA champion. And again, this is the Sheik in 1983. So the life after leaving the NWA before the NWA fell apart.
Yeah, that's
the Empire Wrestling Federation coming to your hometown.
I remember when I first read that press release in my local paper.
Here's a show for you. This is an interesting one. Professional Wrestling, Vega International Wrestling Promotions, 1929 3rd Avenue, New York, 10029. Hilda Negroni, president. Nelson Rivera, matchmaker. Tonight's official lineup, November 18th, 1980, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Brooklyn, New York, 8 p.m. The main event, Pedro Morales versus the Hangman.
Oh my gosh. That was the main event of the first show I ever saw in Utica.
The tag team. Let's see if the rest of this card is the same. Tell us. The tag team bout, the Wild Samoans versus Dominic DeNucci and Manuel Soto.
No, but DeNucci, I think, was on the first show I ever saw.
Special event for the Vega New York State Heavyweight title, the champion Sammy Rivera versus Dixie Pinero, the former champion. And then time limit matches, Jose Estrada versus Angel Maravilla, Larry Sharp versus Steve King, and Don Serrano versus Angelo Gomez. Any wrestler may be changed for another of the same category without previous warning.
Yeah, those guys were all working WWF shows, TV tapings, and local shows right in that same time frame. You named half a dozen people on that show that were at shows that I saw in Utica regularly. What was the year on that?
That was 1980. Was it 83? I just threw it down. 1980.
1980.
Yeah, and like I said, the first shows I ever saw in Utica, WWF shows that had most of those guys on it, was in 1980. It's just funny that even name guys like Pedro Morales had to work these outlaw type shows. I don't know. That could have been a WWF show.
I'll tell you what, one more, and then we got to add someone here. Tonight's card sanctioned by the International Wrestling Stars, Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, Sheepshead Bay Senior High School, April 15th, 1988. The main event, the Iron Sheik versus Freebird Michael Hayes.
Oof.
Special tag team match, the Rock and Roll Connection versus the South Sea Islanders. Special attraction, ladies match, Susan Sexton, the Australian Women's Champion, versus Venus the Bodyguard from New York City. Super Machine versus the Moondog. And then a special feature match, King Kong Brody versus Biala the Giant.
Oh, God.
And it says Biala, not Bialo. Biala the Giant. No smoking in the building, no audio or video recordings allowed, no throwing of objects or interfering with wrestlers or matches. Matches subject to change without notice. See how easy it is to bring exciting IWS action to your community. Join the growing list of groups and organizations that have profited and been entertained by IWS Promotion, which offers a self-contained show, including ring, insurance, publicity, and everything necessary to make the wrestling event a profitable and carefree attraction. Call
including ring?
Including ring.
Fancy.
It's a self-contained show, including ring, insurance, publicity, and everything necessary to make the wrestling events a profitable and carefree attraction. Never heard it put that way before, Dan. A carefree attraction.
Carefree.
That'd be a great group. The Carefree Wrestling Association. They just, we'll be there when we be there. We'll start when we start. Somebody will be there. Don't worry about it.
Yes. Main event is a laissez-faire death match.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to add someone here, and it looks like they may have changed. I'm assuming this is the same person. He just changed his screen name, but if not, we're adding someone I don't want on the show. We'll find out right now.
Whoa.
Trying to add him. We'll see. It shows that it's ringing. I see an icon moving.
Hello?
Mike Sempervive.
I'm here.
I wasn't sure if it was you because what did you change your screen? I'm not going to say it on the air and have listeners start harassing you, but you changed your Skype screen name to something very interesting, a cool name, but I didn't realize it was you. I was searching for you. I was like, where the hell is he?
I didn't realize it changed either until today when I was trying to call Roman. To be honest with you, I don't know if there was a Microsoft thing or what, but yeah, I don't know what it's tied into. But yes, that's fine if everyone knows, since it's every fantasy football or other sports team name that I use. It is the Takata Monster Army. Yes, a ode to hustle because somebody's got to do it. But yes, yeah, why it's that way, I have no idea, and I should probably check that out actually.
Well, welcome to Labor Day Star Wars. On the line with us right now, Mike, is the noted wrestling humorist Scott Cornish, the late
Hello,
Dan
Mike.
Farron.
Hello, Dan. Hopefully this goes a lot better than the last time I was on with you.
And also Lou Kippelman, the superstar producer from San Francisco. He's on the line as well.
Lou, how are you, sir?
I'm quite well, Mike. How are you? I
have been actually doing my very best. I have been smoking plenty of Newports. I have been getting back into drinking gin and bourbon. I am trying to aspire to your voice. I have given up on trying to match jokes with Howard Baum, and now I'm going for that big breathy voice that you have, sir.
Oh, very good. Yeah, just, put me down for a case of Natty Boh, and, I think we'll be all right. And some of the Utz crab chips.
Oh, they're delicious. Yes, you need all the you need all the Balmer traditions that you can get down here at the shore.
Yes, sir.
Oh, let's go O's.
Well, hey, listen, guys, and there's so much I want to talk about, but on to this topic we were just doing, I want to finish this out because I just grabbed something else from this pile. Mike, we were talking about, I just got a bunch of stuff from my collection, and a large part of it seems to be New York specific, but Northeast indie stuff from the 80s. Like a lot of the small shows in Brooklyn and in Manhattan, really interesting stuff. But I found here a program for ICW, International Championship Wrestling. Let me see before I read any of this. I'm flipping through. This is ridiculous. If there's a year or anything that will connotate or demonstrate, I should say, when this is from, it does not have a year. But it's ICW, International Championship Wrestling presents Thunderdome, featuring rock and roll and wrestling.
Oh.
And there's a picture up here of Blackjack Mulligan. And then there's another one. I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's black and white. It looks like it could be Dick the Bruiser grimacing, but I know he wasn't booked by ICW, so I'm not sure who it is. But then I'm going to open this up. It says a little bit on the cover. Again, it's rock and roll and wrestling. They have Blackjack Mulligan. And then it says, starring the dance craze groups of rock and roll. In different locations, the Tokens, the Dovels, Bill Haley's Comets, and then it just has the names of songs here. The Lion Sleeps Tonight, Shake, Rattle, and Roll 12 Million, Tonight I Fell in Love, Worldwide Hits, Rock Around the Clock 42 Million. And
one of the guys from the Dovels was actually a wrestler. His finishing maneuver was the Bristol Stomp.
That's pretty good. And then you open it up. The first thing you have is a full-page photo of Blackjack Mulligan. It says, Mulligan enters Thunderdome. Is it for money or revenge? Only the Sheik knows.
I thought it was going to be for rock and roll.
Well, it's probably not for money. He can just print his own money. But ICW says, just say no to drugs. And then you go to the next page here. A message from the president of International Championship Wrestling. Since the founding of International Championship Wrestling in 1983, I, Angelo Savoldi, president, have strived to make ICW the best wrestling organization possible and to bring you, the wrestling fan, the very best wrestlers that are available. We give the newcomers as well as the veteran wrestler the chance to compete in what we feel is the toughest, roughest, wildest sport in the world and to prove themselves in professional wrestling. Let me put this down and grab this one page. This is a pain in the ass to hold here. We try to treat everyone with the fairness that we look for when I was in the ring, showing partiality to no one. We book wrestlers on the basis of their ability, regardless of their color or sex. This is apparent in our booking some of the greatest men and women wrestlers in the world today. We will always strive to this end. We turn no one away who shows talent and the ability to wrestle. We here at ICW hope you will find all the wrestlers the best and most exciting professional wrestlers in the sport today. Let us hear from you, H-E-R-E. Let us hear from you. Please feel free to write us. And it's an address in Parsippany, New Jersey. Actually, not very far from where I live right now in Parsippany. And then there's a giant half-page photo of the tokens. And there's the tokens there. And then you go to the next page, and there's a couple of photos from the past. And then here's a photo of Heidi Lee Morgan, and then just random, like the Power Twins. ICW says, don't drink and drive. ICW says, don't be a dope, say no to drugs. Every page is some sort of like message for the younger fans, I guess. The Iron Sheik, one of the most controversial figures in professional wrestling, the man who admits to bribing the manager of Bob Backlund to throw in a towel. And that's a new twist on that I've never heard before. He admits to bribing Bob Stolen.
I had heard that was an angle they brought up in ICW.
And then here's a full-page photo of Bill Haley's Comets. Notably missing, Bill Haley.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's Bill Haley's Comets. And then a picture of the Dovells and their giant afros. And then an ICW crossword puzzle with a lot of wrestlers who clearly do not wrestle for ICW here. And so there we go. There's a ICW program. I'm going to assume this is 89 or 90.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, my God. Well, a couple things. One, I learned how to spell Parsippany, New Jersey because of ICW. And that's where I just figured, like, it was probably the basement of, like, Joe Savoldi's house is where the whole operation was coming out of. But also, the Lion Sleeps Tonight, which is, like, when I think of ICW syndicated programming, well, one, I think of obviously Tony Atlas and Vic Steamboat, but I guess that would be more of the sports channel days and them repeating that over and over. Yeah. But it was the only wrestling show, like WWE or WWF had, David Bowie's Modern Love or whatever they would have going to break and things like that. Or, as people started to do their own music, it was like heavy guitar or, heavy bass. And then like for ICW, like they would go to commercial and it would be The Lion Sleeps Tonight, which I... Not really sure why, unless Les Thatcher picked the soundtrack to go out with. I don't know, for some reason that and Bam Bam, Tom Brandy, and King Kalua are about the only things I really remember from syndicated ICW.
You know what? You're not going to believe this, but I'm very fortunate. Tom Burke, who is not just a great wrestling historian, but he sells some memorabilia, and he's on eBay. I shouldn't say this because it'll spoil the things I want to buy. Other people jump in, but his name is K Fabian on eBay. And Tom sells something. It starts, I think, at $25 the bidding. It's called a pound plus of wrestling memorabilia, where Tom literally, and he's been doing this for a long time, he's got a lot of stuff. He takes over a pound of stuff, just throws it in an envelope and sends it to you. That's awesome. And you have no idea what you're going to get. I got the coolest stuff. I got programs, newspaper clippings, postcards, like weird stuff, cool stuff from all over the place. And one of the things in this one, hold on, I'm going to go through this pile real quick. I think it's over here. Hold on, bear with me. This is the other pile. This is, first of all, one thing in here, I got my very first original copy of Ron Dobratz's Wrestling Information Bulletin. Like an original copy, not a photocopy or anything. So that's really cool. This is like the original newsletter that influenced Dave Meltzer. So really cool to have this. And then let's see, AWA program, IWA information sheet, just a card from England, like an original flyer. BWA Wrestling News, the Journal of the British Wrestling Alliance. Hold on, this isn't it. Legends of the Ring. Something in German. The Fabulous Kangaroos. Hold on, there's so much. Tom literally just threw so much stuff in here that I told him next time he does this, let me know. I'm just going to buy it all. Hold on, where's the autographs? Oh, here we go. Again, random stuff. You don't know what you're going to get. Too Rich, best wishes, King Kalua. Autograph photo. I don't know who Rich is, but I got the King Kalua autograph photo.
This is the most shine he's gotten since 1989.
He's gotten more mentions on this show than any show ever in 2 minutes.
God. I just remember King Kalua as a guy who had a week back-to-back matches on Pro Wrestling USA against Rambo Greg Gagne.
Oh, wow.
When they were, I guess, at the Tropicana in Atlantic City, where King Kalua jumps Gagne before the first match, and then the next week, Greg Gagne pins King Kalua and then throws him out of the ring. Because, you don't jump Rambo Greg Gagne like that.
Well, Kalua used to do this face paint. And then I think one of the last times I ever saw him, either a picture of him or a match that he was in or something like that, he clearly had now made like pieces of cardboard with his face paint on them and then just, glued that to his face. So much easier that way. Why didn't I think of this before?
Didn't the Warrior, like at the very end, like in whatever, 96 or something? Maybe I'm wrong. Like there were a couple times he didn't paint his face. He just wore like a mask that you put. No, I'm thinking about when he came back, actually. That must be what it was, right before he died. There was the Warrior mask that you kind of strap on over your face. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Excuse me while I babble about nothing. I apologize to the listeners.
Well, that was still better than when he do like the rouge on the cheek, like the small little like the logo on the cheek.
Mask,
that annoyed the hell out of me.
Oh.
That was like the glam period of Warrior. He had long hair, but it was kind of like messy. And then he won the world title, and he started like poofing it up. And all of a sudden, there were highlights in his hair. He got very glam for a little while.
Looked like a star, baby. Come on.
Hey, Mike, I wanted to ask you. You did Observer Live tonight?
I did.
What was the general consensus about the weekend? What did everyone think about the AEW show? And also, if you got any feedback on the AEW show versus the NXT show in terms of what people like more?
Well, a lot of it is what dividing line that you're on. And it seems to have a lot to do with it. There are some people that, it's just AEW, and I guess it's just where we're at now with discourse and everything else, with Twitter and everything. I mean, it was the greatest show in the world. NXT was the greatest show in the world. AEW is the worst show in the world. Adam Page is getting buried. Chris Jericho's fat and old. But Chris Jericho, it's just, whatever it is, somebody's got a hot take on it. And with AEW, it's like buckshot. I mean, it's like they have a show and it's like bang. All over the place, you're going to have, opinions. And I hate to sound so generic with it, but that's kind of what it is. And I think the most solvent talking points coming out of it have been Adam Page was not built up in the best possible manner. And there were people, as you watched the show, even the most diehard of AEW fans, that just weren't buying it. And that's one of the big takeaways is now that he has lost, he is obviously going to be a future chip of that company. Who is this guy? Why is he a Hangman? What is he about? We saw him go 20 minutes against Kip Sabian. That was his setup to face Chris Jericho.
Why is he a Hangman? Why is he a
exactly?
Hangman?
Is it porn? Is it, well, now we know he rides a horse, but like that was one of the things. It's like he hasn't cut a promo on TV.
I got 3 words for you. International sand sculptures.
Now that's a Hangman.
Yes.
You damn tootin'.
So that's like, I think that's one of the biggest things, you can debate Jericho. And then from there, it starts getting into more minutia of what you like and what you don't like. If you like the women's division and how they're presenting it, if you like Darby Allin and Joey Janela, then, again, from there, it starts to get broken up. But I think that's the biggest thing coming out of it is the matches are a little bit too long. And I think their juxtaposition of the 31 flavors stuff is my biggest deal coming out of it, because you can have 31 flavors on a show and give everybody a little of what they want. But how you slot it and how you present it is going to be, determines how far it's going to go. Because to have the Super Smash Brothers, the Dark Order, who are not over at all, to have them try to follow, the completely ridiculous Cracker Barrel match. It was like, granted, nothing may help that group as a tag team, but that's exactly what you didn't want to do. And just there were some things that were way out of place. How was Adam Page, who's not over at all, supposed to follow Kenny Omega, Phoenix, and Pentagon and those guys doing that type of match? They just couldn't.
Scott, any thoughts? You had some good hot takes last time.
I don't know. He might just crystallized a couple of those things. This idea of 31 flavors, where you have to present something for everybody every time, and then it becomes a bunch of nonsense. It's not almost not even worth bringing up, this business of standing around waiting for people to dive on you. It's not just their problem, but it's a big problem on every show and in every match. SCU is supposed to be considered one of the top teams in that match last night, with one of the hottest acts that they have going. They all just had to stand around like dummies, in the ring, out of the ring, just stand there like idiots who've never stepped in a ring, just to allow all that stuff to unfold, just to be standing there when it's time to fall over.
And that's a frustrating thing for me, because it's like I got to use two brains. And there are just times that, because Wrestling Observer Live is the most mainstream kind of shows, where you get general sports takes from general wrestling fans, and it's struggle sometimes, but it's like, it's not even worth trying to fight the battle of like why Riho and why her defeating Hikaru Shida makes absolutely no sense to me. Why to try to present to people with a critical eye of why guys standing around with these contrived moves, why it's not so cool. Why I believe a wrestling match that's got Cody Rhodes in it serves purposes far better than a stunt show. Because I think, Brian, you were the one who tweeted this out. It's like, is the move really that awesome if you're sitting there quiet and you're waiting for the build up and you see the stunt being built up, and then the stunt happens and it's like, oh, that was awesome, this match is great. Like, yeah. Really, was it? Yeah, and it's, unfortunately, I got to work with two brains that way. And it's, on Observer Live, it's like, I just got to throw my hands up, because, it's almost unarguable, because there's so much that's being lost, and you don't want to be accused of shaking your fist at the cloud like Jim Cornette. But there's just a lot of stuff you look at and it's like, this just isn't good, period. At the end of the day, it's just not fluid, and it's just not very fun.
Yeah, I said it a little bit earlier. I thought too much of it to me is WWE light or WWE-esque, or even worse than WWE. Like, I brought it up earlier. The Librarian walking on the books to get back into the battle. That whole battle royal pissed me off. I know. And then I read there are people who love it. They're like, oh, it was so much fun. It was so great. There was way too much of people. The standing around waiting for people to jump on you is bad. And it's getting worse and worse. It's almost like the Dusty finish, where as soon as you see people lining up on the floor, everyone turns and they're just waiting for the dive. Yes. They know it's coming. They know the run-in's coming, and the baby face is going to fucking be all right. They know it. But it's that, and it's just, there's a general, I don't know if it's because of the choreographed nature of the matches, but like the Private Party match, I think they're good. I think they got something. But there is too much of the people have to wait for you to set things up. Because you're doing something that you don't need to do, and it takes you a while to do it. Everyone has to wait. It's just, and I feel like that. I'm not in the match, and I feel like I'm just waiting. I see what they're about to set up, and I'm like waiting, and fuck. I'm not a wrestling fan anymore. I don't.
Well, there's too much shit. There's too much shit. Darby Allin's got something. He's a small little bastard, and in the grand, in historical wrestling terms, what would you do with him? But in today's age, you can do something with him. But the more you have him out there with the Havocs, with the Janellas, with all that other shit, it lessens him, and it lessens him having something. It lessens him being that guy, that standout, that guy who's going to do the weird stuff, whether you like it or not. And they beat too much of it to death. It's like during the matches, everything went on for way too long. New Japan builds a show in a different way. And even then, oftentimes New Japan shows go on for too long. So even if you build it properly, it's a little much. And everything they did last night was it was all a little too much in excess.
I thought it was their worst show. I know some people thought I was being a little too harsh when I said that. I thought it was their worst show of all of their shows so far. For me, again, I know everyone likes, there are people who thought that Young Bucks match was the greatest thing ever, and I was just thoroughly bored with it. So it's a different thing, but I don't know. We'll see how this TV goes. We'll see.
I need as much Cody as I can get. Because it's just one of those things, like, people love Will Ospreay or they'll love, whoever. I'm still going to prefer an Okada, and for me, of what they offer, what Cody has been involved with so far, most of that has been the things that have been right up my alley. So I'm going to be needing a steady diet of that, as well as some other people doing that, if I'm going to have to stomach as much as the Omega stuff and as much of that stuff as possible. Although I hope with Pac, if he's going to be a regular thing now, I think they jump-started that thing with Omega, I think worked out well. And if they do a triangle with them and Jon Moxley, that may be up my alley.
Well, that
we killed it with AEW talk.
This concludes the AEW portion of the program. What were you going to say, Scott?
And not to harp on it, but let's leave the dog at home from now on.
Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, I did read something about that, and I didn't see the whole story. So tell me, is it true Cody Rhodes has his dog now is it an emotional support animal that he travels with? Is that what it is?
Man, that's what rich people do. I'm
asking a serious question. Is the real story?
I think he does. I think he does. And that was one of the debates.
They had a photo of them with the dog on their flight in, and the dog had like a service dog vest on. And
does Cody have any disability? I mean, I'm asking a very, very serious question. I'm not being funny. Does Cody have any disabilities that we don't know about or that aren't publicly talked about or anything?
Hey,
I don't know of
killing this hippo there.
Well, if you set fireworks off next to that dog again, he's going to need an emotional support animal.
That was the real problem. It wasn't the thing on the plane necessarily, which was bad enough, but that poor dog was,
brutal.
And that dog is being run around. I don't know. They know better than I do. Does that dog want to be in front of hundreds and thousands of people every time they take him across the country somewhere? And that pyro thing was really bad. That dog just shaking, walking to the ring.
There's a reason Lassie only works small rooms,
Well, yeah, on top of the fact that was a pet. That was not a working dog. I mean, can literally old dogs learn new tricks? Because, that was their pet. They got thrust into the scene. And, the plane thing was just, one of those things in the hospitality industry. I've seen every gimmick for somebody to have their animal with them, their pet guinea pig as a support animal stuff. And you're supposed to have limitations on it, but you also can't beat it to death either. Sometimes it's you got to turn your head at it. And I think it's just a douchey thing to do if you don't have any disabilities. So they're being complete douches. And I hope they hear this if that's the case. But they were just being straight assholes and being terrible pet owners and everybody involved. I mean, for just, and I get it to a point that they were concentrating on bigger things. So maybe they didn't think of the dog, but good. Think of the dog next time, you idiots.
Yeah, they were concentrating on bigger things like, where do we get Star Trek uniforms? And we can come to the ring. What was that? Was there any? I don't watch their Being the Elite or any of that stuff. Was there any sort of science fiction backstory to why all of a sudden Dallas Page, Brandy, MJF, and Cody were dressed like they're from Star? I mean, it wasn't even like a generic space show. It literally looked like they were from Star Trek. What's the story there?
It's Cody wanting his presentation to look like the big WWE entrances on a show like WrestleMania. Hunter gets a big entrance. Well, I guess we'll just come up with something here because that's what everybody wants to see. Everything he does is sort of, and I like him in the ring, but everything he does is just sort of overdone and overproduced. And, God forbid we don't mention Dusty every 5 minutes,
Cody is the biggest star in Cody's world. And
yeah.
Cody's a big fan of Cody. He's a big fan.
Yeah, cue up that Terrell Owens. I love me some me. Yes, you do. And the entrance. I mean, it's almost he's self-aware enough. He's got to be to know that he's doing it. But there's also he doesn't realize how out of balance I think it comes across to everybody else. I think with some of him, it's oh, they'll take this as some tongue in cheek. There's part of that and part dead serious, but I don't think they know how it comes across. I think to the general public of like, you can leave this alone now because you talk about not being petty, and that's all you're doing is being completely petty about all of this, Steph and Hunter.
Last night I tweeted out, I said, who's picking the shitty music for AEW? And then someone wrote, Tony's sister, Shaka. And
Yes.
Not that you guys would be happy about this, but it's like there's West Side Gun, Griselda, who's very big right now in the hip hop community, and it's like somebody slide somebody there some beats or something with some of the music that they've had. It is when it comes to their production, there's a lot of, depending on how you think of it, but one general thumbs down all the way across the board has got to be the music.
Yeah, you should have someone pick it who's actually gone out to listen to bands and like end of the night getting laid.
Yes.
Not music that you drive home alone to.
Yeah. Self-hug, self-high five. There you go.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah, bingo.
Yes. Speaking of DDP, yeah.
DDP.
DDP, who's dressed up, I said on the mothership, well, it's good to see DDP dressed as Worf with no prosthetics needed.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Dan, you've been quiet. Are you still around over there, or have you passed away once again?
Oh, no, I'm still here. It's just I just been enjoying all the conversation about all this stuff, because I didn't see any of the show yesterday. All I heard about was the dog got scared by the fireworks. That's about all I know about it. So when the weekend comes for me, I work a long week. So when the weekend comes, I have to pick and choose what I watch. So like I said, I watched NXT Cardiff, and that was about it.
See, that's the problem with the wrestling business nowadays. If that dog had a union, then something like that would never happen. But because the wrestling isn't unionized, they tortured that poor dog.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about calling Marty Funk, because when she and Dory were at Cauliflower Alley, one of the reasons why they were charging was to raise money for the Humane Society. And I thought maybe we should need to get her fixated on helping that dog.
Oh, man, that would be that may push the Jim Cornette AEW feud aside if it turns into AEW versus Marty Funk. That would be, that would be a short-term feud, and then we'd go back to the big feud of Jim versus AEW.
Yeah,
right.
She can't work a long program. She'll, it'll be a hot angle to start, and then she'll burn those fans out, and you have to get her out of the territory quick.
Oh man. Well, Cody's bringing in all the heritage players anyway from Dusty's feuds. So why not Dunk's kind of nutty wife?
We should do a poll. Yeah. We should bet. When will Cody bring in Magnum TA? When will Cody bring in, just a list of people?
Oh, it's coming.
Yeah, it's absolutely coming. Nikita. When is Nikita going to be there?
Manny Fernandez, please pick up the white courtesy phone. Manny Fernandez.
The Billy Corgan NWA bidding war.
Yeah.
Who wants to bring it? Because seriously, because I can see Jimmy Valiant of again, I have no idea what the hell the end of, and it's coming up. It's like the end of September, the beginning of October, they're going to film TV, and it's like, I know you're doing this in Atlanta, but unless you do something, why couldn't you just do this at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood? Why? I don't know. I guess I appreciate the chutzpah, but it's like I have absolutely no idea what in the hell they're going to do.
I think the idea of a modern studio, I'll go to you in a second, Dan. I'm sorry. I think the idea of a modern studio show is a good idea because it's a change of pace from everything else. And also, you have to modernize it. You have to make it look so it doesn't look old, but you also have to make it so it doesn't look so modern and quick and guys yelling at you and quick cuts. But it is, I think, the most effective way to get a wrestler over is the studio setting. You have to train people. You have to reintroduce things. You have to do it in a good way. Now, with that said, I have no faith in the people currently doing it and doing it the right way. But I think the concept is somewhat sound, but you also need people operating it with a good crew to know what they're doing.
Well, to me, basically Full Sail feels like studio wrestling to some extent, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, and that seems to work, but with all these opportunities opening up, I got to feel like guys like Pez Watley somewhere right now are training for a comeback. Until they got a chance. George South and the Thunderfeet are all working out somewhere saying, got a chance to come back.
Jai Cones 2020.
I think the NXT looks mostly more like studio wrestling than anything. And I know they keep saying, "Oh, if AEW does well, they're going to move it out of there." But I think I would just leave it there. I think it's fine there. I really do. I think it's maybe the audience gets a little jaded, but still, one of the reasons why I enjoy their TV show is because of that close atmosphere.
I think it's time for Mike Jackson to fuel up the van again. And get some of the boys down there. Or
Italian Stallion can put all the guys in the van and take them halfway to the city, then stop and charge them $100 if they want to go the rest of the way, like they used to do to the Hardy Boys all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know the type of prestige that in the days of ironic wrestling, what kind of prestige the Alabama Junior Heavyweight Championship could have right now? It would be at a higher level than the Cruiserweight Championship, that's for sure.
There aren't any big locally named indie wrestling companies. I mean, everything's like, Game Changer or Defiant or nothing's like, Central Ohio Championship Wrestling. Like, nothing actually says the name of the area anymore.
Very few. CWF Mid-Atlantic is
what does the CWF stand for then?
Well, championship. Well, what the hell did it stand for? It was Championship Wrestling from Mid Atlantic or something like that. That's how they got around the Mid Atlantic trademark. Right. Sure. All yeah. Right. At least they got it in the name, for Christ's sakes.
Hold on. I'm trying to see if there's
people keep talking about a wrestling boom, and people keep forgetting that boom is part of the word kaboom, which is very easily what happened with a lot of wrestling shows. And a lot of this stuff is going to just be overkill. There's just way too much to watch. There really is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing we didn't there was a New Japan show in the UK that was sold out, and it had a main event of Okada and Minoru Suzuki. And Minoru Suzuki put on an epic performance. And I mean, and that's a big name on a big show from a big company. And how many people are going to see it because of the fatigue of the weekend? Yeah. Because there were 2 other shows on that were easier to watch. It is amazing the amount of riches that we have at this point. Although, I don't look and granted, it's like being a kid, but I don't look forward to it as much as I did those, 20 hours that I get in my area of syndicated wrestling programming every week, back when I was a kid, because at least that was all different. And it just, I don't know. It was a different time, but still it's, I see all of this stuff out there, and how much of it is actually penetrating people, how many people are actually becoming wrestling fans become of it, for a long term.
Well, heavy thoughts leave empty minds, apparently, here on the show. Is anyone there?
I was going to say, I mean, I've pretty much killed everything on The Observer, for Christ's sakes. That's why Jim Valley's there for everything at this point now. But, man. Damn.
Boy, if Jim Valley didn't invent the selfie, he certainly has popularized it.
What is it, the stern? He's got a stern selfie.
Well, he always makes the same, expression in the selfie. That's his thing, I think.
But what is that? It's either he's smelling a little bit of something or he's looking down at something. It's almost it's Goodfellas on the poster, but a little bit I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there.
I see it as kind of yep, I'm here and you're not. That's the way.
Yeah, that's definitely. He's going to Dubai next week. It's he's got the best gig. God bless his wife.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a better selfie look than Colt Cabana, catching flies with his mouth.
Yeah, what the fuck? I think that's the original reason I started hating his show. Every time I saw the image, it was him sticking his tongue out.
Yeah. These guys have no respect for tradition. When you take a picture with somebody else, a selfie with a wrestler, especially pointing finger from at least one of you, if not both. pointing back. My finger.
Yes.
Well, you also have to make this. That's another thing. You got to do the fist sometimes.
You know what nobody ever does anymore that I wish they would do would be the picture of the one guy who's coming to get you and the tag team partner watch out, he's coming to get you. I'll have to put. Look, I'll have to provide photographic evidence. You'll know what I'm talking about once you see it. I swear.
Yeah. I don't know. Can we nip in the bud this new meme of a wrestling fan doing the prom pose with whatever diva is available for photo ops?
What? I haven't seen that.
Have you not seen that?
No.
Oh yeah.
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 Wait, what do you mean? They show up in their tuxedo?
No, but it's like sweaty bald guy, kind of standing behind Alexa Bliss and putting his arms around her arms, that sort of thing. It's just missing the boutonniere and the corsage.
Trying to
it's kind of just.
I haven't seen that. No, I can't believe the women are allowing that.
Yeah, that's surprising. I've seen Becky in a photo like that, and it's horrifying. I feel very bad for her, even though she's getting paid.
I can't see Becky anymore without thinking of Pee-wee from the movie The Wanderers. You go back and you watch The Wanderers, and you watch Pee-wee. Hey, I can't do the voice. What'd you say, kid? I can't do the voice at all. My voice just went away all completely. But you go back and you watch The Wanderers, and you watch Pee-wee, and you realize it's the same facial expression as Becky, and it's almost even the same voice, even though she's not doing an Irish accent or anything. Go back and watch it. You won't be able to lose that thought afterwards.
There are even some guys now who, when they take, it's not just wrestlers, but guys that when they take a selfie with women, Keanu Reeves is one who does this. He makes sure that you see that his hand is not touching the woman he's standing next to. It's reaching out beyond it. He's not being a creep by grabbing her, by the waist.
Yeah, the best is still Robin Thicke years ago when he took that picture after the VMAs with the girl, and he didn't realize there was a mirror right behind him, and it had his hand just handful of ass, and then his wife left him. That was the best.
Well, that was Alan Thicke's thing, wasn't it? Was he not a...
Was it Alan Thicke's thing to grab women's asses?
Well, I don't know, but at least as far as being I don't want to say womanizer, but a man on the scene, the non-Kirk Cameron.
A legendary Hollywood coxman.
Let me ask you something.
Canadian coxman.
If you were a Canadian star who wrote the theme to Different Strokes, wouldn't you be out there just laying that pipe? Come on.
I'd be grabbing as much ass as possible.
Yeah, lots of side chicks while he was married to Gloria Loring from Days of Our Lives.
Do the Thick of the Night, do they exist anywhere on DVD?
I don't
DVD?
know.
No way. Come on.
Him and Chevy show.
The Chevy
right.
show.
Oh my God.
Someone should do something with that. There's something to be done with that where you could put them together with commentary, and then even like cringeworthy commentary where someone sits down with Chevy to watch those, and you just know it'll be really uncomfortable and awkward, and then Chevy will say some really inappropriate things and not understand why everyone else is upset. And the same thing always happens with Chevy Chase. Every 5 years, there's an article in the paper like Chevy Chase doesn't understand why the SNL cast hates him. Chevy Chase doesn't understand why he doesn't hear from his old friends in Hollywood. Every 5 years, there's a whole series of articles. The same thing keeps happening.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that would be fun to do a director's commentary track and just ply him with gin and Percocet. and see him try to be funny.
I remember when he did the Chevy Chase roast, which was a disaster. Al Franken, one of the few SNL people to show up. He was funny because you remember Chevy had to go to rehab because he had a problem with the way Al Franken says, he goes, I remember when Chevy had to go away because of his problem with back pills. And I remember the guy who used to sell Chevy his back pills. He used to come around SNL. I think his name was Kenny Sunshine or whatever he said. And it's the one time Chevy pops because Al Franken names his coke dealer in the middle of the It's the only time Chevy reacted the whole fucking roast. He sat there stone-faced while people who never met him before talked about what an asshole he is.
Yeah.
I just remember his ending promo to that too, of just like, hey, yeah, fuck you, everything bad, bye.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I don't know if you guys watch Community or not, but the guy who created it, Dan Harmon, Dan Harmon had like a weekly sort of podcast performance thing in LA, and he played the voicemail, angry voicemail he got from Chevy Chase. I guess Dan Harmon in front of cast and crew and everybody did a toast to Chevy Chase and said, "Oh, here's a hearty fuck you," and so he played this voicemail of Chevy Chase leaving this aggrieved and pissed off message. It's just like, man, that is on brand Chevy Chase. Angry and not very funny.
Remember, the best line from that roast may have been Stephen Colbert, who at the end of it goes, "And there's one thing you can be happy about. When you leave here, remember, he's Chevy Chase, and you're not." Who's wrestling's version of Chevy Chase? I mean, other than the fact that George Goulas kind of looked like him. But I mean, like in terms of someone who, a lot of early potential, went to their head, turned into a massive asshole, destroyed their entire career, but they're still around, and every now and then they get a chance.
You know, that could have been Gino if he would have lasted. Because if you think about it, too, it's like, you know, a guy like Gino Hernandez, yeah, he could have been a big star, but he also could have flamed out, too, by saying the wrong thing to the wrong person or something like that, or,
Well, he's having a big weekend, but maybe Tully.
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about a guy who was, great worker, but a locker room lawyer.
You know, not to the extent of being an asshole, but in some ways, Austin Idol. Like,
oh dear.
Lots of potential, and then, like, you know, he leaves. And then every now and then he would show up, and then he would leave. And then he would come back, and then he would leave. It was kind of like Chevy. Well, I guess not. I shouldn't use that.
Well, with Idol was flaky, whereas Tully was self-destructive, whether it be because of his mouth or his attitude. And that would be more of a Chevy, you know.
How about
and never
Al
as smart
Perez?
as he thought he was.
How about Al Perez?
It's another good one. Who thought he was a lot smarter than what he was, which got him in trouble. And tougher.
He was in the movie Cop and a Half. Played an extra in the background during one of the scenes.
Did he still have the luxurious S-curl sprayed hair?
Let me tell you, I watched that a few years. He did, by the way. And so did Lightning Lou Perez. But I watched that movie a few years back, and it was so awful, but I was dying. I was laughing so hard. Because you're watching it, and it's such a bad movie, and such a bad premise, and the script's awful. But it's wonderful, because Burt Reynolds clearly does not want to be making this movie. And you Cop and a Half with him and some unknown kid as the co-star, just driving around Florida doing it. But it's such a funny movie. I laughed my ass off watching that. So, guilty pleasure, Cop and a Half.
Can you imagine him in the testing process of that? Like, we couldn't even get Webster? Like, this is what you're sticking me with? Hey, you're the one who lost all your money, pal. Let's go. We're letting you at least keep your hair on.
It's always interesting when they change something. I don't know why I was reading this today. Again, the things that I obsess over for 10 minutes and I read everything about. But the Bobcat Goldthwait movie, what was it, Hot to Trot? Was
yes.
that the one?
Yes.
Apparently the horse was originally voiced by Elliot Gould, but it didn't test well, so they replaced him with John Candy, who decided to just like destroy the script and just improvise the whole thing. So a little information. I had forgotten that John Candy was the voice of Dom the horse.
Don the horse. Yeah.
Until I read this.
How bad does your voiceover in one of the worst movies ever conceived have to be for test audiences to say, no, the horse voice doesn't just.
Is that like
not authentic enough.
Why didn't Andrew Dice Clay? Is that why he decided to shit on him in the balcony that one day?
That was amazing. My dad was there that day with his friend. They went. It was, I think, at the Westbury Music Fair. It was Dice Clay live, and in the middle of it, he starts talking about Barbara Streisand because that was real topical in like 1993 or whatever. And he's like, "She used to fuck a guy named Elliot. How do you fuck a guy?" And all of a sudden, they're showing the crowd. There's Elliot Gould sitting in the fucking crowd while he's ripping up Barbara Streisand, fucking a guy named Elliot. I mean, it's so funny. It had to be. They had to tell him in advance, Elliot Gould's here. Make sure you make a Barbara joke or something. But it was so awkward. They just show him sitting there, and he's not laughing or reacting. He's doing a Chevy. He's just sitting there. He may have even been wearing sunglasses, and he's just not flinching. And it's just so weird because he obviously knows the camera's right in his fucking face.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that shitty show he did with Moriarty, or what was it called? Because I remember the commercials. It was like Andrew Clay, no dice, and it was like the new Andrew. And then I think that's like right after that when that show completely crapped the bed. I think that's like that was the first stand up he did after it, and it was like I guess he was getting his mojo back on Elliot Gould of all people.
I think there were two different shows. One was Hits, where he was like a record producer. And
that was the UPN show, yeah.
Yeah, and then there was one where he was like a mailman, and if it wasn't UPN, it may have been WB or something.
CBS. No, that was the one with Moriarty or whoever it was, where it was like the new Andrew.
Andrew Clay.
Drew.
If he really wanted to be new, he should have used his real name, Andrew Silverstein. That would have really fucked with people's heads. Like, what the fuck? He's not Italian? All right. Well,
he was still funny in Casual Sex.
Casual Sex was such an awful movie, but when I was a kid, it was like, oh my God, there's going to be like naked women and sex.
It's a USA Up All Night type of celebration for me at that age.
But even that was depressing. There wasn't enough shit going on. There wasn't enough naked women. If you're watching Cinemax and Showtime, and if your parents happen to have the Playboy channel and you know how to access it, you're seeing lots of really great shit. And then you see that Leah Thompson doesn't get nude. Not that I really was into Leah Thompson. And what, Victoria Jackson? I don't know.
Another one you're not into.
You were already into the bikini car wash company.
For an 8-year-old, I was pretty disappointed with the smut in that movie, to be quite honest.
Oh, the Dice Clay sitcom was called Bless This House.
Bless This House!
Bless!
Join me and Kathy Moriarty! Ow!
No, that's whether he didn't have the voice.
He should have done it. See, that would have been funny. Like the first episode, he just started doing a nursery rhyme and then I changed it at the end. Hickory dickory I can't do this on CBS.
No, that's back when he was trying to be the new Dice. He was trying to be the gentler, kinder Dice.
Andrew Clay.
Which lasted all 5 minutes. Yeah.
Andrew Nice Clay.
Andrew Nice.
Yeah.
See, I love Ford Fairlane. I know I've said it a million times. Ford Fairlane, one of the great movies of all time.
That's a great bad movie. That's one of those ones if it comes on, like you get caught in watching it, and it's like there are far worse movies out there, but like there are some bad Remo Williams. There are some bad movies that it's just like I got to keep on if they're on, even if I don't love them, just because they're just so ridiculous.
Gilbert Gottfried is Johnny Crunch, the DJ that Dice knew from Brooklyn, and he goes in there, he goes, Johnny Crunch, you whatever, you big piece of crap. And then I remember his response, because his name is Ford Fairlane, he goes, Suzuki Samurai, you Bensonhurst piece of shit. So one of those lines that always stayed with me. Gilbert Gottfried. Between that and like Beverly Hills Cop 2, he had a Problem Child. He had a couple really funny small roles. Like within a 3-4 year period that he never appeared in another good movie ever again.
I love Gilbert Gottfried. Back when I was working in Los Angeles, right after he got fired from Saturday Night Live, the horrible version of Saturday Night Live when they tried to switch over, and I had gone into the sandwich place. Yeah, I had gone into the sandwich place late in the afternoon, and there was nobody in there except Gilbert Gottfried and like 3 friends. And I sat down there, and they were talking to him, and they were trying to make him feel better because he was very, very depressed that he had been fired. And finally, he yells out in that voice that his character voice. He yells out, "Do you know how bad it feels to be fired from the worst show on television?" And that's what they were trying to. Basically, they were suicide watching Gilbert Gottfried, who was just figured his career was over at that point. Little did he realize that there was much more to come.
By just playing Gilbert Gottfried, like whether it was a Third Base Video or the Cosby Show or anything, it was like Gilbert Gottfried as Gilbert Gottfried, and it was great. Like as opposed to a Bobcat Goldthwait or somebody like that. I mean, no offense to anybody if they're a big fan of Bobcat, but like of guys who would just play themselves, basically, man, he was so great at it. Gilbert Gottfried is awesome.
I saw him a year or two ago. And I saw him do stand-up. Over the course of 2 years, I saw him do stand-up like 3 times. And it was fantastic. But after the third time, I said, "Oh, this act has not changed in the 2 years that I've seen him." It was exactly the same, but it was still great. But it was funny. The first 2 times, the audiences couldn't have been any different. And the first crowd that I saw him perform for was kind of young. It was college town and not at a college, but a college age crowd. And this was just a couple of years ago. So the current social mores are in effect. And that audience didn't boo him, but there was a lot of quiet moments because they were like, are we allowed to laugh at this kind of a thing? And I went, oh my God, look how bad it's gotten, you know? and then maybe a few months later, I saw him with a I guess I'll say an older audience and same act that went over like crazy. Yeah. And his podcast, if anybody gets a chance to listen to it, is really a gem. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. Free plug while you're waiting for the next 605 to come.
Very good. And Bobcat Goldthwait, may I recommend what was called the Citizen Kane of alcoholic clown movies. Shakes the Clown.
Shakes, yeah. Oh, God.
That was Bobcat's directorial debut, a tour de force. I gotta say, that's one of my guilty pleasures.
He's actually turned into a respectable comedy director in recent years, and nothing truly sensational, although he did a documentary that everyone should see called Call Me Lucky about his friend, the late Barry Crimmins, comedian who had a real difficult, tortured life, passed away just a year or so ago. But I got to see Goldthwait and Barry at a local premiere for Call Me Lucky, and it was really a great evening, a great experience. And when he does stand up now, he no longer does the Police Academy character. He doesn't do the podcast character anymore.
Yeah. And tying it back to wrestling, I was surprised to find out that Bobcat was the AA sponsor of Roddy Piper.
What?
That's right.
That was, Piper revealed that on his podcast and had Bobcat on as a guest.
Yeah, he had him on a couple of times.
So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I hate when people do impersonations of me. I would never do that, Roddy. I didn't know that. Interesting little tidbit there.
Damn.
Yeah, let me.
Guy Shakes the Clown. Was I the only one? Granted, now I was way too oversexed by Julie Brown.
Yes. Downtown Julie Brown or white Julie Brown?
White Julie Brown.
Girl
Fuck
Julie
that.
Brown.
I want downtown Julie Brown.
Well, but my thing is just like, because I just was thinking about this.
Wubba.
MTV was like, did she
I'm
ever
hoping to hear Lou say that.
Did she ever have a career outside of MTV? I mean, did she do stand-up? I remember a couple of acting roles, but I thought that was because she was on MTV. Did she do anything else?
She did some comedy albums. She had a song that was actually pretty funny called The Homecoming Queen's Got a Gun.
And then the other song, Earth Girls Are Easy.
Girls Are Easy.
Became a movie.
Yeah, I remember the movie.
Yeah, with her and I think Jeff Goldblum.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Well, to tie that in back to our Alan Thicke story earlier, is that actually she was on TV and told a story one time about she actually slept with Alan Thicke one night, and in the middle of them, it was some talk show or whatever it was, some interview show, and she said, she was in bed with Alan Thicke, and all of a sudden his son ran in and started screaming, "Go, Daddy, go! Go, Daddy, go!" They ran out of the room again.
Robin Thicke, hype man. All right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Some people have a wingman. Some guys have hype men.
That was the first thing that crossed my mind when you guys started talking about that, and I thought, I won't bring it up. Nobody's going to remember Julie Brown, so why should I bring it up? And it's funny that we came all the way around the circle.
I heard that used to happen in the Nashville office all the time. But what do I know?
Oh, no.
Oh, boy.
Hey, whatever happened to Yakov Smirnoff?
Oh, I think he's firmly lodged in Branson, Missouri last night.
That's right.
Yeah.
I looked up Branson, Missouri a couple of weeks ago just to see if they still had celebrities that had their own regular theaters, and Yakov is the only one that's still left in Branson.
I thought
Right.
Van Dyke had something
they've still got a lot of theaters and things like that, but they're all sort of wholesome, family-oriented reviews, like the legends of rock and roll, and people doing tribute acts or people doing corny sort of hee-haw routines. But as far as actual name star power, most of them have passed away. I mean, the early days of Branson, when it was, he says it, it's still popular, but it's
Andy
definitely
Williams.
down. Yeah, they're all gone.
Williams Moon River Theater, Boxcar Willie's Theater.
Boxcar Willie's gone. Ray Stevens, I think, is still alive, but doesn't have a theater anymore.
Right.
I heard Yakov on a podcast, and he said that after the Berlin Wall fell, it like ended his career for a while. He had really nothing that he gives because he was such a one-note comedian. But now with all the last couple of years of the controversy about Russia being involved in the elections, he's actually kind of had a resurgence in his stuff. So it's interesting how it just basically depends how Russia goes. So does Yakov Smirnoff. So.
And I want to say that Yakov Smirnoff was also like adopted a new gimmick of being like, almost like a love or marriage advice person with like PBS specials. What? I got to look that up. I want to say
something like that. He had tried something different. Yeah, that way because the stand-up stuff was fading for him.
Everybody sit down. Yes, what a marriage.
Yes, in Russia, marriage therapy chooses you.
He's another guy who played his character in a movie, Brewster's Millions. When Montgomery Brewster walks out with all that money and all of a sudden he has an entourage, needs a car, calls over a cab and he goes, "I'll pay you $20,000 a week to be my cab driver." He goes, "I can't believe it. What a country." He does the total Yakov Smirnoff act for his one scene. And then the Berlin Wall fell.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's see. Yeah, I'm looking at Chicago Tribune 2006 headline, Yakov Smirnoff's new act, all about spiritual healing. So he's like, I don't know, what is this? Men are from Moscow, women are from Minsk?
Well, I'll tell you what, Scott brought up a wholesome family review. Let me add this person real quick here to the line. I understand this is his new working number. Let's see if this works.
How you doing, wrestling fans? It's Sunday, September 1st. Here on the Wrestling Hot Seat. This is Dominic.
Who died?
All right. The 10 bells with this report. David in Baltimore's wife passed away.
Oh,
No.
July 16th while the hotline was down. That's fucking sad. I hate to hear shit like that. David, she's in heaven, bro. Believe me. Wow.
I'm sorry. Oh, God.
All right. Let's get
Jesus,
this report done. Neurotic, thank you very much for the play-by-play and the results from the All Elite. I got them all saved. That's going to be on tomorrow's report. Once I go through the messages and write them up neat, I'll be able to put it on the report.
No spoilers, Mike.
All right. Today's wrestlers' birthdays. This is really sad because the majority of these guys are great, but they're all deceased. Flyboy Rocco Rock of Public Enemy, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Mad Dog Vachon. Also, Black Gordman Jr., the son of the legendary real Black Gordman, the original partner of Great Goliath. Also, Casey Thunder, Douglas Williams, and celebrities, Gloria Estefan, Lily Tomlin, let's see, Tim Hardaway, Barry Gibb, let's see, Yvonne DiCarlo, all right, Lily Munster, Oh, it's also Deuce's birthday. Remember Deuce, Jimmy Snooker Jr. of Deuce and Domino? Actor George Maharis, Dr. Phil, and those are the birthdays for today.
I think you should end with
the day in wrestling history. This is a good one. September 1st, 1982. Number 1, Paul Jones defeated Jack Briscoe in Charlotte, North Carolina to win the NWA Mid-Atlantic title. Tournament match. We got a draw between Bob Backlund and Chris Jericho. So, David, I'm going to need you a tiebreaker. And, yeah, the next match, I'm going to love the next one. But I'm not giving it until I get the tiebreaker. Okay, the other fantasy match. 2 guys that'll never probably be in WWE again. Ryback and Alberto Del Rio. Got another draw. So, David, I need you again, bro. Okay, let's see what I got that I can give you.
All right. I think Dominic's had enough this week. He seems like he's really struggling to get through his show. By the way, if anyone wants to call Dominic, the number 773-572-6398. The Wrestling Hot Seat for over 20 years. Controversial and birthdays at the same time. But, yeah.
I'm glad we got that feel-good episode out of the way.
Boy, that was awful. That is,
Jesus.
Yeah, the highlight was Scott playing the honking while he was playing the 10-bell salute. Oh, man.
This edition of the Hotline brought to you by Prozac.
But he's like struggling with the birthdays. Like, let me see. Aren't they right in front of him on a piece of paper? Like, why is he struggling? Like, it sounds like he's looking like, where else could there be birthdays on this desk?
Ryan, last open your fucking ears. Didn't you hear I started the show? That everybody's just dying. And so if you have a birthday, you're going to be born, you're going to die. Now let's get to the tournament results.
Let's get to the tournament results. This one's really good. You know, this one you should feed to the alligators. Just throw them on an island with crocodiles or alligators. Well, there it is. For everyone that's been saying, please give Dominic and the Wrestling Hot Seat another chance, that may have been the most depressing edition of the Wrestling Hot Seat we have ever played here on the air.
Laughter. Remember that?
Remember laughter? Remember Mambo Teacher from the Honeymooners? Remember that? By the way, Josh Dunn in the Mothership group has kind of done a tribute to Dominic. Well, I don't want to call it that, but he posts the birthdays every day, and he does. I think he writes, "Remember that." And, you know, it's his little tribute.
Remember him. Remember her.
Him. But anyway, someone save this show. Someone come up with a good topic here. Or, you know, you don't have to. Or we could just end the show.
Well,
or I can announce the show sucks and record another one tomorrow.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Man, it's a hell of a thing being on the other side of this one.
Dan called that one earlier.
Mike, what was the feedback on your on the Observer site about the NXT show, the Cardiff show?
Well, people loved it, and that was the Walter Pete Dunne match has been the biggest thing. And I don't know, I think a lot of people just saw that and saw the Cesaro match with Dragunov and absolutely loved it. And it's just one of those things, you know, people are wondering why Tony Storm and why a lot of people are just sitting there in NXT UK, which is it's a goddamn dead ass brand. It's no fault of anybody other than there's too much stuff out there and they don't feature any of these people. So what can you do? And it's a little vacuum. It's fantastic. But outside of that, there's nothing. Might as well be an Evolve show.
Yeah. Has anybody, Mike certainly has. Have you guys all seen this Ilya Dragunov?
I haven't.
I know the jury's out on his wrestling ability, but he might actually become a major star based on the fact that he has the most insanely ridiculous facials that I've ever seen.
What do you mean? In what way?
It has to be seen to be believed. It goes beyond mugging. It's crazy. I don't know what he's going for. He comes across as not a particularly threatening Russian. He might actually be really quite good, but the facial stuff is very distracting. It's beyond comical. It's weird, is what it is.
Hey, Mike, who's the guy that was on AEW last night? Waldorf. They did the big debut promo video for.
Honestly, I thought it was Brian Cage at first because I thought Cage was going to be there, and I don't know who the hell that guy is. Yeah, Wardlow or wherever, the guy who beat up the high school drama kids on the playground. Holy shit! Yeah, that they'll have to work on that one. But yeah, I have no idea who the hell that dude is.
They're going to chant his name like Goldberg one day. Waldorf. The whole building will be chanting for him. What was that? How much money did that cost? That little promotional video. That's what I'd like to know. What was the budget on that crap? I'm not expecting an answer. I was just speaking out loud. What was the budget? I'm looking up who this Dragunov guy is. I've never seen him. And
he's really just a UK. I mean, Progress, I think, is his home promotion, if I recall correctly. But matches with David Starr over there, with Walter. He's had some, WXW, actually, I think, is where he's got the most attention over in Germany.
All right. I'm going to probably end up watching the entire NXT show, I think, just because I want to balance out whatever I watched yesterday. What were you going to say, Scott?
No, just another question for Mike. Mike, did Sean Spears always wear weird atom bomb contact lenses?
I don't know. All of a sudden, he's like the Iceman. I don't know what the hell that was, but it's like, shouldn't he charismaless, devoid of attention, player uno? Shouldn't he have those in his eyes as opposed to Sean Spears? We already know what he looks like, and I think. Yeah, with the Tully Blanchard stuff, and I know he wants to do something a little bit different than what he was doing in WWE, but I don't know if aesthetically that look worked for him. Now, Brian Alvarez, what's wrong with that? I don't know. I guess nothing, but it didn't really fit. That's just kind of like how it stood to me. But, again, there's going to be a lot of that stuff that is going to be taking, I guess, the good with the bad. And one plus was Tully Blanchard. I thought was fantastic. The little bit he was there, you could see how some of those guys, stand out a lot better than some of their younger counterparts that hopefully that they can get in their ear with. Although some of them, it's probably way too late.
Any more questions, Scott, before we hang up on you?
Actually, guys, I do have to go because I have to work tomorrow, so I have to prepare for that. I had to get used to chasing kids on skateboards and yelling at trespassers to move. So this is what I do for a living.
Hey, Dan, any update on the Dan Farron referee keychain figure?
No, I have to get back to that guy on that. I don't understand. He told me he was busy, very busy getting ready for the big lucha thing they had down in San Diego. But he said he should have more information after that. But yeah, I can't. I'll be more than happy to get as much information as I can because I have never looked as good as I do as a plushy keychain. I mean, I have muscles and abs and breasts and all kinds of stuff on that thing that I don't have in real life. So I definitely need to get a copy of that. So
yeah, well,
but I'll let you guys know because I definitely will offer them to you. Maybe we can work out something to give the money to a worthy cause.
I think that would be very, very cool, and I'm sure the fans would really love an action figure of you with muscles and breasts. So let us know when you can make this happen.
And brown hair. That's how long ago this was made. I had brown hair then. So, but I'll definitely let you guys know about that.
All right. Well, Dan,
it's always, it was a lot of fun talking to you guys. Always is a lot of fun.
Always great to have you here on Star Wars or on the 605 Super Podcast. We will have you on again very, very soon. But Dan, happy Labor Day, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
See you, Dan.
Bye.
And there he goes, the late Dan Farron, the man Mike Lano has twice pronounced as dead. very much alive and very popular here on the Super Podcast. Let's get another topic. I'm trying to see if I'm going to just tell the listeners. Bob Barnett indicated he was around earlier, but I haven't heard from him since. Won't be around until 6:30. All right. Well, I'm going to see about that. Why don't you guys talk amongst yourselves for a moment?
I think we could probably come up with something. Possibly, maybe, couldn't we?
Mike, you're in charge.
See, that was my way to throw it out there to the rest of the class because I had nothing. I tell you, I will say this. Thank you for letting me come on to these shows because, as you could tell, and I apologize if I'm way too verbose or whatever the SAT word would be. No dead air on Observer Live, so I apologize if I walk over anybody, but thank you for letting me do this because doing Observer Live and watching as much of today's modern stuff as I have to do, I really need this balance very, very badly. Thank you, because it's a very abusive relationship with this new stuff.
No, we love having you on the show, and we definitely love to have you on more because we have a good time talking about the stuff, and the listeners love having you on. And it must be tough for you because you do have a love for classic wrestling, and the majority of your time talking about wrestling is predominantly, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, talking about contemporary wrestling.
Yeah, and not even good contemporary wrestling much of the time because of the nature of that show. It's WWE headline nonsense for the most part, without a whole lot of delving into anything. Not a whole lot. It's part sports talk. It's part. I don't know what it is, but it can be. I need to be centered, and that's I always wonder, people who have got to keep up with modern stuff, because I've known so many people that just go, I'm not watching anymore, or I don't care anymore. It's like, what keeps you centered, for those people that do stick around, because I know you got to refresh. You got to watch your old Mid-Atlantic tapes or old Mid-South. It's like, it's interesting to find out from people when they do have to watch this stuff or keep up with it, how they continue to try to remain to stay sane. And, for me, it's going back and at least, listening to shows like this and watching as much old stuff as I can to just try to get that old thought out of my head, I take that back, the new thoughts out of my head with the old stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so, like you said earlier, there's so much. I couldn't wait when I was a kid until the weekend. Saturday morning, Superstars. Saturday night, TBS. Sunday morning, Wrestling Challenge. Sunday, at the same time of Wrestling Challenge, USA Network on USA in New York, and then, obviously, TBS Wrestling. Monday night, Primetime Wrestling. And then there was nothing. I mean, then, if you had ESPN, maybe you caught something in the middle of the day. If you had Sports Channel, maybe you had ICW, but that was it. I couldn't wait until the next episode. Now I just don't even want to watch. It makes me just not want to watch. So, I don't know. How many times can I keep complaining about how much I don't like things?
Well, and I'd say I hate to do that too when I'm getting paid to do it, but it's like it's part of it's the discourse. And part of it is having to deal with people where everything, again, is so. If you say one thing nice about AEW, you're on the payroll. If you say one thing nice about WWE, you're this. And it's like, it's brutal where, I mean, I guess in some ways it was always like that. But it wasn't. At least, amongst people that I knew. Again, I didn't grow up with newsletters. That was not my base of getting into things. It was the after magazines and, watching all that syndication on TV. And I didn't become jaded till a lot later. And I think, again, that's one of the more tiring things for me. And that's the one thing you don't get much out of when you look back at stuff is a lot of that discourse. People can debate who was the better this or the better that or anything, but like beating things to death and ripping them apart and shredding them, with malice or, just looking for the negative, it's not there. Whereas that's just the first thing you do too much and too often with so much of today's stuff.
Lou, Scott, are you guys both still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
I'm sorry.
I was stunned into silence after you threatened to hang up on me.
Oh no, I would never do such a thing. I would never do such a thing.
Intentionally. Whoops. Yeah. When I see what you describe as the discourse now, I realize that I did go through, and I still watch wrestling. I still watch current wrestling, not everything, not all of it, but there was a time when I was a lot more enthusiastic about what I was watching, and so maybe it's just a thing that everybody goes through. That people, this is a younger audience now coming up watching whatever it is they like, and they're just as enthusiastic as I might have been at one time, and just so. Is it my problem or is it their problem? I haven't seen this level of how bad it gets between the varying sides. Sometimes you do sit there and go, you can like all of it if you want, or not like any of it, or just like some of it. I don't know this, the current rendition of Beatles versus Stones. You could only like this and you couldn't possibly like that. That's where the criticism is funny to me, because people will make almost any kind of excuse for the thing they like, then they'll turn around and bury it when they see it someplace else. Stupid is stupid, no matter no matter who puts it out.
Yeah, very true. And it's going back to the as sort of almost a weekly ritual of trying to catch your, favorite wrestling promotion on TV. And then now it's, we're living in an over-the-top, on-demand world that you could just ingest as much as you want. It's a buffet now, as opposed to, I don't know. It's like, I waiting a week for World Championship Wrestling to come on, and remember, and being legitimately shocked when the Horsemen beat the crap out of the Road Warriors. I remember that. But it's there are moments like that, and then I don't know. It's the paradigms have shifted, and we have all these indie promotions with players appearing on several promotions, and it's a matter of I don't know if it's necessarily a matter of having a good match or having a good working style, as much as can I produce a Instagrammable moment, and then kind of work the gimmick off of that, seeing how much merch it can be moved. I don't know. It's I am muttering and stuttering. Yeah, you could say that. That's is just your decontextualizing a lot of the action, and it's just it's this spot or that spot, or how many light tubes can you hit an artery with. I don't know.
Did something happen with another guy getting hit with a light tube? Someone sent me some video, and then another guy did, and then another guy tagged Cornette on it. So I said, okay, something's up, and I didn't watch it, and I don't have a desire to watch it, but I didn't watch it at the time. But what happened?
It was a wrestler, I think, named Graver, and from what I saw, the action, I don't know if it was on the Game Changer Wrestling.
Yeah, that's where it was in Chicago. Yeah, G. Raver apparently is dude's name or something like that. But yeah, it was on the Game Changer show. It was a suplex spot off a ladder, kind of went awry, and fell down. And I think it's barbed wire was wrapped around his arm, whatever it was. Ended up with one hell of a gash that he had to go running out of the building with, and they actually stopped it.
Jesus. Yeah, and fortunately there was a hospital across the street, and so somebody. Somebody snitch tweeted Corny on that with that particular clip, and Corny gave his usual standard hilarious / withering comment, and then Mr. Raver took offense to that and said that tweeted back and said that next time he saw him at a convention or something, he was going to spit in Courtney's mouth.
Not in his face, but in his mouth.
In his mouth, which I find just, in particular, that's a specific type of kink. That is...
I remember, I don't know why this reminds me of it, but years ago in 96, I had a hotel room in Philly at the Travel Lodge. Devin Storm room with me that night, and a bunch of people were in a Blue Meanie and Dave Shearer and the whole Wrestling Lariat crew. We're all in my room watching videos, and then we start making phony phone calls, and there was some fan that we called. I forget who it was, but we were all fucking with him. Well, Devin Storm was fucking with him on the phone, and Devin Storm at one point says to him, "I'm going to take you by the hair and wipe your ass with my face." and then it was hysterical because Devin realized he fucked up what he was trying to say, and he just stopped and he held the phone away from his face and just looked at it, and then he went right back to it. And I'm gonna take you by the hair and wipe your ass with my face. So that's a kink.
Mike and Lou, did either of you ever stay at the Travel Lodge, or as Lou Meany and so many others refer to it, the Cylinder of Sin?
No, sir.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Oof, that place was a pit. And I read a recent article online somewhere. The place is still open. It has not been condemned, but it's in such horrible condition that only the absolutely clueless or desperate would ever even attempt to book a room there. And I don't know how tall that building is, but they said everything beyond the third or fourth floor is so completely inhabitable and destroyed, and everything below it that they actually will book people into is completely horrifying.
Right. The elevator's
really
been out of service for months.
Yeah, they don't go up beyond the third floor or something like that. Oh.
Yeah.
I stayed there, I think, one night, and have been there 2 or 3 times, and that was, not
Did you bring your own plastic to put on the mattress before you laid on it?
I'm going to say yes, but no. It got worse after I stayed there. I remember the one time I stayed there, there was literally just nothing to do, and the people that I was there were staying elsewhere or whatever. So I wake up at I don't know what hour, and I just said, well, let me just take the elevator down and see if there's any zombies, wandering out, fans or anybody that I knew wandering around the lobby. Usually there were some wrestlers down there. Unless they closed the bar, they would be down there just letting the fans, buy them drinks or whatever. But I take the elevator down, and the door opens on a different floor, and a really prominent, well-known ECW wrestler is in the hallway, physically sitting underneath a hallway table, crying his eyes out. Whoops, not my floor.
Oh, God.
On we go. Very, very, very weird. And that's one of the nicer stories I've heard about.
And if they would go there after a show, they'd be recording the promos in the hotel, so you would catch wrestlers coked up throughout the building all night.
Oh, yeah, completely crazy. One time they had at, what was Spectrum? One time the Spectrum, or one of the big arenas in town, had a motocross show, where they take in truckloads of dirt, and they have dirt bike race and motocross races and things like that. And some of the motocross teams were at least the crew or whatever, were staying at the Travel Lodge and parked at the Travel Lodge. And this was the same weekend, I guess, as an ECW show or something like that. And the story was that after the first night of the motocross or whatever, they had so many bikes stolen out of the Travel Lodge parking lot that they had to cancel the second night of the motocross event. And let me see what else. But that place was my stories are fairly tame, but that place was a legendary pit.
Dump.
Still is.
Yeah, still is a dump.
I was always like, when I used to think
it became too sleazy for the ECW crew. They moved to like the Holiday Inn or someplace. Oh.
I always remember hearing the stories, and I guess during the Crockett Cup, it actually happened where they were at the Marriott Inner Harbor or the Omni or wherever they were at the Inner Harbor in Baltimore. But like, I would hear the stories about like, we're going to be at the Marriott, and it's like, man, one day I'm going to figure out a way. I'm going to get to the Marriott and I'm going to party with the Horsemen. And then it was like, to find out it was like the one by the BWI airport. And it was like, not all that good. And it was like, to find out about like, some of the women that were talked about maybe didn't exactly look like the ones that Ric Flair was presenting on TV every week.
No, man. Ric Flair would every now and then show up on TV with a woman, and I would say 8 out of 10 of them were really good looking. Every now and then it was like, come on, what is this? But I mean, I know who some of the women were that the Horsemen were with during those years. They were definitely several notches down.
Yes.
From, the models that you would imagine a Ric Flair should or would be with.
It's the penthouse pet that he had on there, the one with all the very pretty girl that he was on there with, and it was just and then to see some it was a lot more Travel Lodge wrestling business that I thought than than castles and things like that as it was presented.
Yeah, that's why DiBiase had it so well.
What a great gimmick. Yeah.
I'm going to make you $1 million man. You're going to be in a limo and in the best hotel in every town forever.
That's it. You're going to ball out everywhere. That was what an amazing gig.
And I'm going to give you a slave.
Oh, God. Shall call him Virgil.
Virgil. And if Dusty doesn't like that, I'm going to make Akeem the African Dream.
Boy, I tell you, there was a whole line of them that hurt my feelings as a Mid-South fan that grew up like loving the football and loving wrestling. And the tough man, the natural Akeem, Ted DiBiase's $1 million man. Although, again, as you look back in hindsight, it's like with DiBiase, it's like, well, yeah, that's, you know what? I don't blame him.
You bring that up, and it was really interesting, and I don't know why this made me think of it, but we had that Eddie Gilbert interview on Pro Wrestling Spotlight from 91 recently, the best of 91, best of fall of 91. And you bring up the football, he's like, people all around the country don't want to hear some commentator talking about football in Oklahoma or whatever he said. And it's like, oh, shit, he's saying that, like, Jim Ross, no one wants to hear this shit. So... funny. I did always think Jim Ross, it was too much football stuff.
Well, that was the 8 3/8 head on Albert. Like, he'd start doing a little bit too much with that, and yeah.
But what did you guys think of, I'll ask Scott, what did you think of the commentary last night?
It was okay. I'm not sure what, if it's just in the early stages or if that's Ross's role, but he did have this thing where he seemed to be like the grouchy old man, and the other guys were just sort of humoring him.
Well, I think there were times where Jim Ross, in his own way, put his foot down and said, I'm not getting this over. Orange Cassidy being a prime example. That happened. Yeah. Jim Ross said, like, this isn't my job. I'm going to be Jim Ross. I'm not going to put this over. When they pulled out the tennis racket, and then, God. Janela, who, Jim's living in his head, and then Excalibur finally had a chance to say something, which was, something silly, like, who wants to see a tennis racket in wrestling? Jim Ross again got quiet. There are moments on that show where you could tell Jim Ross, I'll give him credit, he's not completely selling out. He's going to be true to himself and what he likes. So...
That's why I think it's such horseshit that they have him call those matches, like with Janela and everything. It's like, he's an old dog and he's not going to want to learn these new tricks. You shouldn't put him in that position. It's not going to get anything else over. It's kind of funny to hear him, not sell it and then Excalibur jump in. I think Excalibur did that a couple times. He covered for Ross, where Ross, I think, slipped naturally, and there were times where he just wasn't going to sell it, like you were saying. And I think Excalibur did a great job jumping in there. But how about not put him in those positions, because it doesn't help anybody. And frankly, with shows running 4 hours anyway, give him a break and let somebody else go out there and do that will be far more enthusiastic about it than what JR was. Because to me, again, like the most real thing was, and maybe they loved this, when Darby Allin went back first on the barrel into the steps, and it's like, basically, like, what the fuck? If he could have said that, if he was, wasn't, too professional to say that, like, that's what he sounded like he was going to say. So why are you even doing this stuff when you have 90 million announcers anyway? I'm not saying put Marvez back out there, but let Golden Boy and Excalibur do it.
Well, again, we need to get away from the 3-man announce team in general, but it's going to be even more interesting when it's Shivani and Excalibur and Jim Ross, because Shivani, I don't know how up to date he is with the current product. I doubt he can call current moves. So then Excalibur's going to be calling the moves. What is Shivani and Ross doing at the same time on commentary? It may get very crowded very quickly, but hey, it's modern wrestling. They're not doing any of the tropes from the past, like heels, baby faces, or hiring every single person that was in the business from the past. So,
no, I say my booking idea is to try turning JR heel again, change his name to Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah, you see? You see? I think Waldorf...
That could work.
Yeah, did he have a giant scar on his back? Was that what that was, or was it a tattoo? I couldn't tell. It was dark.
I don't know, but now Jim Ross can just heckle somebody in, and then Waldorf can beat him up. That's perfect.
See, there should be that feed for the commentary, the heckling feed, where you just have the commentators like just ripping on the show.
Borderline a Muppet Show anyway, so it makes sense.
They like geek shit anyway. Why not have a MST3K sort of commentary feed?
It'll be bigger than the actual product. More people listen to me and Jim talk about their shows than actually watch their shows. If they had that kind of thing on there, like a Mystery Science Theater type thing where you can watch it and hate watch it at the same time, it would be massive. You'd have more people watching that than the actual feed.
Second audio programming, put you guys in a room like right next to the sensory room too, so you can like bang on the walls at them a couple times too as you're watching it.
Oh man.
Yeah, the most sensory. What was it? The most sensory aware wrestling company ever. They only tortured a dog. Other than that, if you have any sort of issues with sensory issues, don't worry. As long as you're not a canine.
Oh boy.
Owned by one of the executives. Oh boy.
Good Lord.
I still can't get over him traveling with it. The dog as a support animal. That I can't believe it's that easy. I mean, I know, it's one thing if you're flying private, but if you're flying commercial, I can't believe it's that easy to just, I guess I should. These doctors write scripts for tons of OxyContin. It's that easy to get a prescription that says you need your fucking parrot to fly across the country or whatever. Jeez. Maybe Cody's had PTSD from, I don't know. Again, people come up with the stupidest reasons that they get away with stuff. And like something tells me, again, maybe talking about the presentation of things when it comes to him, maybe, just maybe personality wise, he may figure as if that is like, he's entitled to do so. I'm not saying anything about that. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Based on who his father is, I would believe it's a support animal more if it was a yellow dog.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. My bad 1991 humor will return next week, right here on the Superpodcast.
Well, as soon as I saw the horse, too, with Adam Page, it's like, again, I guess, because I was thinking before the show, it's like, again, you've got nothing to really build this guy. What other than, like, Smithfield, Virginia, which nobody has any idea where the hell that is or wherever exactly he's from. It's like, why is he a cowboy? And at least he came out with a horse last night, a la Midnight Rider. It certainly wasn't very Jerry Lawler-ish, but later Rider, maybe.
I have to admit something, because I'm not a big modern wrestling fan. For a long time, I kind of got their names confused. I knew who they were, different people, but Adam Page and Adam Cole. And the one thing I've realized is I don't get either one of the guys. Like, I understand they have a look and they have long hair and they're in shape, but I just don't get it. I don't understand. Like, people are like, oh, you got to see him. He's great. I don't see any wrestlers anymore. Like MJF I do, but that's not really for in-ring stuff. That's for everything else. Not to put his in-ring down, but they're very.
Well, I've barely seen him have a match yet.
Yeah, he's had like a couple of multi-person matches. Yeah. But I don't even remember what the fuck I was saying. So who gives a fuck?
Yeah, you want to continue the Mid-Atlantic theme? They should have had Paige trot the horse down, and then out of nowhere, Baby Doll hops on it and jumps the fence.
Oh my God. On the new episode of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight. It's up now for patrons. The podcast, actually, I guess the day this episode comes out, the podcast will be out too. They have Rockin' Robin in studio. And it's really interesting. She's there for a long time. She's in great spirits. She seems like really cool. Like you really end up liking her. There is the awkward moment of the live report that gets called in from Battling Beauties at the Right Track Inn. You have to hear that. But Sonny Blaze, when he finds out that her brother is Sam Houston and that Baby Doll was her sister-in-law, gets so excited. He goes, what was in the envelope for Dusty Rhodes? 1989, even a year after it happened, people were dying to know what was in that envelope. Sonny Blaze got so excited about that, and she didn't know. She had no idea.
He brought up the thing about Baby Doll on the horse. It was around this time in 80, whatever it was, 5, where
85. Yeah.
Baby Doll turned on Dusty, and the whole Floyd a sway back, and they got back. And, it was around this time she made that turn, and that was it. It was Magnum losing the U.S. title. I think a year later was around this time. But yeah, the big thing with Dusty was lost Baby Doll, and that was it again.
Yeah, that was the Baby Doll during the 30 days after the bash being Dusty's property. That's how she escaped.
How about Magnum
the credit cards in Hawaii?
Oh God.
$4,038 on this bill? Come on. And like Magnum just sitting there. It was like one of those interviews where Dusty's doing the comedy Dusty, but Magnum's still sitting there stern faced with the hands on the hips, like he would just be doing for, we're going to come kill you promo against the Midnight Express or something.
What if Baby Doll didn't like that kiss? When Magnum forces her to kiss him, and then eventually, hey, she likes it. She likes Tony. She likes it.
Yes.
If that hadn't happened, if she had been like, you're a rapist, you awful. Like, when you really look back, Magnum really was a bad guy. He's beating up Bob Geigel. He's forcing women to kiss him.
Oh, yeah. He was spanking Precious.
That's right. And I think about it, Magnum put his hands on a lot of women in the wrestling business in a short period of time. So, bad guy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure he's a very nice guy.
Yes. We're retconning him into heeldom. Yeah.
It would have been a good heel run. When Magnum finally turned heel and he finally got to explode in a few interviews, it would have been great.
Yeah, no doubt.
It would have been really good.
Can you imagine, too, if he would have stuck around? Because how it seems to have worked with Barry Windham. Like, you would never have trusted that he would be in the same place for too long. So even if Magnum would have lived, how many, what were the chances that Barry Windham would have come in and you would have had heel Barry Windham against Magnum, or had Barry Windham come in as, Dusty's friend from way back, and hey, you were here and then you left and now you're back, and Magnum could have been cutting in on his action, or there's a lot of things you probably could have did with those two down the line. And I know a lot of people were probably bullish, or like, I guess in hindsight, people aren't bullish on Magnum being NWA champion, but I think for that time, for that fan base, if you would have did it at the right time, it would have been big. It certainly wouldn't have hurt, especially compared to the reigns of Sting and Luger that they had there.
Yeah. I don't know.
I know you're not a big Magnum guy.
Well, I like him in Mid-South. It's not that I'm not a big Magnum guy, but it's just...
He would have played to the base. Now, would that have played the Northeast or anywhere else on a grand scale for a long time? Probably not, especially like when the Stings came along. But I think, again, if you would have did it the right, it's because to me, it's like David Von Erich. David Von Erich works great up until a certain cutoff point for me. But then I think of like when we were talking about St. Louis with Mushnick and Race, like Flair loses the Missouri title back to David. And who knows if he would have survived if David would have gotten run with the NWA title. But like, it's hard for me to really think about the way the business went and the way the direction things went. David Von Erich being that big of a world champion. Certainly, I can't believe him being a better NWA champion at that time to that base than Magnum TA was outside of Dallas.
Well, speaking of David Von Erich, I just got this. I thought this was interesting. I never heard this before. It's an issue of Tom Burke's Global Wrestling News Service from February 84, issue number 101. And this is a really cool thing Tom did for years, just results and clippings and wrestling news. So this clipping is from February 10th, 1984, Von Erich dies. And the reason I thought this was interesting because it's a nickname I've never heard. If I said, Mike, what nickname did David Von Erich have? You know, Kerry Von Erich, the modern day warrior. Did David Von Erich have a nickname?
Was he the Yellow Rose?
That's really it, right? That's the only one you could really use. Scott, Lou, Yellow Rose of Texas, right? Is that it?
Yeah.
Well, according to this article, I'm going to read the article and then I'll come back to the nickname because I don't understand how it got here. Wrestler David Von Erich died of acute enteritis, an inflammation of the intestine. An autopsy performed at Tokyo Hospital revealed. Von Erich, 25, a member of the famous wrestling family led by patriarch Fritz Von Erich, was found in his room at the Takanawa Tobu Hotel at 3 a.m. Eastern Time, Friday. Japanese Wrestling Association referee Joe Higuchi said he searched for David Von Erich after he failed to arrive for a match at Korakuen Stadium. Quote, David had been complaining of stomach ache and pains, said the elder Von Erich. He had some diarrhea, but he'd go on and wrestle on the tour. We thought it was the flu. He worked hard. He was a good boy, a good man. Von Erich, whose real name was David Atkinson, was on a 3-week wrestling tour of Asia. And the nickname they said here at the beginning is Wrestler David the Iron Nail Von Erich. Has anyone heard that before? The Iron Nail?
No. Was that just for Japan? The only thing I could think of is like a play off of like when he debuted or something like the claw and the nail or something. I have no idea. I've never heard that.
Unless it's a reference to his physique.
No, I don't think it's a Japanese article because it looks like it's from somewhere in the States, but it doesn't actually say where it's from.
No, but like a Japanese nickname. Was that like one of those things where, because I mean, St. Louis, Florida, Dallas, like where else did he go where he would have picked up a...
Nah, you know what? I just did a whole segment with Fumi Saito, and I think I brought up the Von Erichs a few times. I'm pretty sure he would have at one point said, the Iron Nail.
Maybe it was just supposed to be the Iron Claw, and I have no idea.
Oh, no. So maybe the Iron Nail is the Japanese word for roach clip.
They called Kerry the Iron Head.
Oh, God.
I apologize. To the Von Erich family. I'm a big Kerry Von Erich fan.
It doesn't matter. I'm banned anyway. I love them all. And man, Kevin blocked me. And I think what it was too, you asked me about like, what was it? I think I had just said something about Fritz because I wasn't sure. I think it was just like, it was too bad, about, Fritz pushing the kids. And I think that's what it was. So whoever runs Kevin's Twitter, unfortunately did that to me, which made me very unhappy because I had to find out about that Thai airplane commercial, the one-way flights from Israel through you.
Hey, you there?
That sweet banana daiquiri, or whatever the hell he said. Banana latte.
That's
sweet banana latte. Sweeter than heaven's rainbow.
Oh, sweet heaven's rainbows! I'm going to Thailand.
Semper Vivi. Your block, soy boy.
Soy boy.
I just got barefoot kicked in the nuts.
I once threw an iron saw through a cat. They call me the Iron Saw.
They call me the Iron Crowbar because that's how I wrestled.
I gotta find out the Iron Nail. Now I'm dying to know, like, where did this come from? I mean, it's in the paper. Not that makes it real or anything, but how did it get in the fucking paper? They have a Joe Higuchi mention and a quote from Fritz Von Erich. And then the Iron Nail. I was going to say the Iron Rose. The Iron Rose of Texas. David on it. The Iron Nail.
I wonder if they're all in MLW together. If when Kevin has been there with his sons, if Teddy Hart has been there with his cats, if that's caused some sort of issue or anything there in the land of MLW.
They're about to get an iron check. No, I kid. They'll be lucky if they get a check. No, yeah.
A USFL antitrust check, eh?
I don't know. No, I'm happy. I'm happy whenever I hear like the Von Erichs or like it's one of those wrestling fandom things with me. I still like hold out hope that there would be like Von Erichs in wrestling. I know it's silly, But like, it would be nice if there was like Von Erich, and people like, oh, well, they don't work. I would like it if they don't work the way everyone else's works. I can't speak all of a sudden. But like, I just want something different. But that's the thing. I haven't really seen them. Do they wrestle like everyone else? Do they do dives like everyone else? Do they do the same moves like everyone else? I want them to be like Kevin. You know what I mean? I want them to be like just wild and wrestling their own style like Kevin.
Hey, one of them kind of does. I haven't seen him in forever. I haven't seen him during this MLW run. The last time was the Impact stuff a couple of years ago when they were in Dallas.
Scott,
no, it just seems that the two young brothers there as a team has been taking a long time to get to wherever they're going. It just seems like I heard about them, and years and years passed, and now suddenly they're in the news again. Everyone that I ask, everyone that has seen, and I haven't, has seen them on MLW says they're very, very good.
Yeah, I don't know why it's taken them so long, or why they haven't ever latched on to anybody or any trainer or anything like that. I mean, other than I probably wouldn't want to leave Hawaii either, but I don't know what the deal is.
Especially Kauai. They live in just a beautiful place. That's my favorite place in the whole world. I love Kauai. And I think that's part of it, because I don't know if the opportunity's been there for them to work like full time with someone like, come move to Florida and work for NXT. I know they do Japanese tours, but to work indie dates, if you're out of Kauai, more than likely you're going from Kauai to Honolulu and then flying out of Oahu. So that's a pain in the ass. And that's expensive as fuck too. So that may be the problem. So maybe they're getting maybe whoever's using them now is getting a good deal. I don't know.
Maybe. Do they wrestle barefoot?
I don't know.
One of them does, I think. I can't remember. It's Marshall and Ross, and I'd have to double check, but I believe one actually does do that. Yeah, because again, one is more like Kevin, and I can't remember because I know Dave will always bring it up, Meltzer, when he talks about him. That I mean it's one is more like the father than the other one is. Although I guess they both are very Von Erich physical. They're not small dudes, or they're pretty jacked up dudes. So. I guess they're kind of built more like Kerry, but they smash around like Kevin.
There was a whole bunch of guys that were supposed to be this generation of, I was about to say second generation wrestlers, but it's not even that. But, the Von Erichs, the two DiBiase brothers, Richie Steamboat.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that we thought were going to be like the next batch of guys that it didn't work out, or at least it hasn't so far.
Even the ones that weren't gonna you figure they wouldn't be big stars, but they just didn't even land. Like Manu, the one, and who else? James Snuka's kid, Deuce or whatever it was. There seemed to be a ton of second generations that flowed in and then just flowed right back out again. And I always thought it was too bad with Ted DiBiase Jr. I thought there was something with him that it just didn't work.
Well, you know what? He was just like his dad. Go back and watch Mid-South Wrestling from early 82 or late 81. He was just like his dad. He was a bland guy who had to figure, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but he had to figure it out. He had to go out there and work for a couple of years and then develop a personality, either as a heel or a babyface. You go watch DiBiase at the beginning of 82 and the end of 82. Great wrestler, but really didn't exhibit much charisma or personality. And then he turned heel, and it was another guy. They turned this guy heel, DiBiase Jr. He was a heel almost right away. And then I never knew what to do with him. He never got into a comfortable role, and that's all it needs to kill your career, I guess. He walked away, though. He chose to leave, right?
Yeah, he absolutely. Yeah, he went to do whatever business he was running. He was, cuffed up with his woman, and that was it. He didn't need it. He had other, and that was two. And it's a difference in generation of like the Richie Steamboats and guys like that. And granted, it was his back too, but he had something else to fall back on. They were all lucky enough seemingly to have other interests there too, which was good, for the most part, because, especially at that time where it was WWE or, what did you have? Ring of Honor, was going to Japan, but it wasn't exactly the same thing. It was either that or Impact. And, it's amazing how much things changed, in a decade to where we're at now, where it's just an absolute Wild West show and a free for all to a certain degree.
Yeah, well, at least we still have wrestling history, and that's where we come in, and that's what we keep doing here. We're going to start wrapping things up in a second. Few notes. Episode 100. I've heard from so many of you who've been waiting for it. I've been building it up. It has taken a while. it will probably be the longest episode in show history. And it is taking a little bit of time to put together because there are a lot of parts. We've been redoing a few things for the show, but sit tight. It's going to be really good.
My contribution, I've been quite the diva. I've torn up scripts, sent out, lawsuit threats and things like that. But we'll get it all worked out.
We'll get it all worked out very soon. And the good news is a lot of episode 101 and 102 are already recorded, and I got a lot of things in store for everyone, so stay tuned. But episode 100 it's a fucking monster. It's a fucking masterpiece. You're going to all dig it. And if I say so myself, the Sean Waltman interview, the Mike O'Hara interview, the George Shire segment, the Fumi segment, the top 10. There's a few other surprise segments in there. In the news, lots of really cool stuff. So stay tuned and thank you. We've had some record months, people just going through the archives, and it's always flattering when the numbers keep going up, even though I don't put out a new show. So thank you to everyone who has done that. And we really appreciate everyone continuing to spread the word, wearing the t-shirts, buying the t-shirts. Of course, thank you to everyone. New Arcadian Vanguard shirts are coming very, very soon. But as always, thank you to everyone who has been supporting the Super Podcast. It is a nonstop operation, as Scott knows, as Lou knows, Mike knows a little bit. And we really do appreciate everyone's support. But as we start wrapping up this episode, Scott, you were one of the first people on. Any final thoughts or notes or anything you want to say to the listeners? You diva you of the Super Podcast.
No, thanks for being so understanding. Thanks for hanging in there. And thanks to you and the fellas here for having me on. Always a good time.
Superstar producer Lou Kippelman. Of course, the producer of Breaking Kayfabe with Baldwin and Barry, as well as Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam and Sean Goodwin, as well as all the bang-up work he's been doing with Scott Bowden and Kentucky Fried Wrestling. Lou, any words or any final thoughts you have for the listeners here this week?
Well, it's hey, I'm glad they're with us. They continue to be with us. It's a solid community. I'm one of you. I started as one of you. I continue to do so. And yeah, keep listening, keep interacting, and yeah, it's going to be fun. I can't believe it. I'm coming up on almost 1 year with the Arcadian Vanguard family. So it's flown by.
And I forget now, did you debut on a Star Wars? It was a Star Wars, right? Or was it a regular episode?
I want to say episode 93, the trivia contest.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if we did the trivia contest on a regular episode or on a Star. For some reason, I thought we may have done it on a Star Wars, but yeah.
I think it was the opening segment on a regular 605. So it has just been living on the edge of a lightning bolt. So
well, it's been a great year, and
we continue to TCB. Yeah.
Well, it's been a great year, Lou, and we're certainly looking forward to more years and more fun we could all have. And fucking Familia just threw the pitch away. What an asshole. Mike Sempervive. Mike, you have been such a welcome addition to the Arcadian Vanguard family. We love having you on the Super Podcast. We certainly look forward to more appearances and more stuff we could do with you. Anything you want to say to the listeners here before we wrap things up?
Well, first I'll ask you, how many games of the Nationals up on you right now?
I think it was 4 before this game started. We're tied at 2 in the, is it the 8th? ESPN sucks. They don't have the graphics up right. I fucking hate ESPN.
You just stay the fuck out of the way and let me lose in the first round, okay? like we are wanting to do, okay? But
you guys wasted Davey Johnson. You're going to be cursed forever. Should have played Strasburg.
Tell me about it. All right, for another day there, but just want to thank all you guys on here, people that are listening, and everybody, part of the community. And I never want to sound like I'm bitching about it. I vent here a little bit about modern wrestling and Wrestling Observer Live and all that sort of stuff, but I'm very lucky to be able to do what I do, and I'm not bitching about the job at all. It's a job, though, and it's not my passion. My passion is the same passion that almost all of you have out there. It's radio, and it's old wrestling. It's the stuff that we grew up with. It's the passion that we all share here. It's why I think you can have on your, anywhere from, Vandal talking about like stripper, transsexual, dildo enhanced pro wrestlers that would wrestle in Tijuana and turn the page and have George Shire talk about the greatness of in history coming out of the AWA. And it's just it is a great community to be a part of. I am very happy to be here, and I hope to continue to do more if everybody will be willing to let me. So I think it's fantastic. And again, very thankful for everyone, because for me, this type of stuff does center me when I do have to deal with so much stuff that is, let's just say, not necessarily in my wheelhouse as an old man anymore.
Well, like I said earlier, Mike, we certainly have loved having you on the shows, and we look forward to having you on much, much more in the future. But as we wrap things up, I want to remind you, stay in touch with the show on Twitter at 605pod. Of course, Facebook, facebook.com/superpodcast. We're on Patreon. We're on paypal.me/superpodcast. You want to make a donation to the show. If you want a t-shirt, tinyurl.com/superpodstore. If you're on Amazon, tinyurl.com/superpod. Amazon to help this show out with your Amazon purchases. And I don't have anything written down in front of me. I'm doing everything off the top of my head. I think that's just about it. This week, the 605 Super Podcast is a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Happy Labor Day to you in the States. We'll see you next time. Tally-ho!